Hey everybody, I'm John Bell and this is the Harbinger Report. So tonight, I changed gears. I was going to do a different show, and then in the middle of preparation, I decided, you know what? I had a few guests ask me to do a show about Montauk, Long Island, also known as Plum Island. And then I had another guest asking me to do a show on time travel. Well, the funny thing is, the two of those go together, and I'm going to be explaining that tonight. It's a subject I've known about for years. I've followed for years, more so before it became popular in recent times because of television shows. But it's an amazing experiment. It goes into a lot of different issues and fun kind of conspiracy level stuff. So, is it conspiracy truth or is it false? What is it? What is it? And oh, and by the way, a fan reached out saying that they are from Australia, and that warmed my heart. Saying they were a big fan from down under. I love Australia, and I wrote back to him and told him how I cried the day that Steve Irwin died. I absolutely did, and I'm man enough to admit it. I love that man, and I was greatly saddened and still miss that guy. That guy was a special person in this world, and our world is less not having him in it. I pray for him and his family that's continued on, Bindi, and his son, and his ex-wife, trying to maintain their wildlife refuge or zoo. I think it's kind of both. But yeah, that was a sad one. But also, I wrote back and told him I love the show La Vagabond on YouTube. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite shows that I follow, and I followed it for years. I followed it for many years, and I love it. In fact, one day I found that Henry Cavill, who played Superman and has been in the Warhammer controversy recently over wokeism and DEI, which is, we're starting to see problems with that, right? Where Secret Service agents don't know how to like reholster their weapon, and look like they're way overweight for the job, and they're not tall enough to like protect those they're trying to cover. But anyway, it's enough on that. Um, Henry Cavill one day did a show and posted it on media saying that one of his favorite shows that he loved to follow was La Vagabond, which is about an Australian couple that sail around the world on basically cruising yachts and just film their daily life doing that, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like they're living some kind of like fantasy life that the rest of us don't get to experience, and they're raising a whole family on the boat. It's really amazing. Just and I've fallen in love with those guys, and they're great because they offer like Patreons to their channel chances to go join them and ride on the cruise. Now that could be dangerous, but you don't know who the heck out there you're reaching out to. But luckily, to my knowledge, they haven't had a problem with it, and they've made fantastic friends sailing all over the world. And their story's great. The guy on the show, he worked. He's from Australia and worked. I forget what it was. He was like sail. He worked some kind of, I think, offshore job or something. Raised some money and went and bought like a 30-foot schooner boat and decked it out, didn't know anything about sailing, and just took off. And just kind of learned as he went, you know? And then I think he was like in Egypt or somewhere like that in the Mediterranean, and he meets this other girl from Australia who was, on walkabout with her friends. And they got to talking and hit it off. And he's like, "Hey, you want to come sail on my boat?" And she's like, "Yeah." Then they got engaged, they got married, and now they have like at least two kids. So, uh, and it's been, it's been crazy ever since they make their money doing shows online. Anyway, sorry to donate so much time to that, but I love the channel, and it hit me that people from Australia made me think of that. I'm a scuba diver. I love scuba diving, and I love scuba diving with sharks. I love sharks. I love big sharks. I just got back from the Bahamas at the beginning of the summer, and it's one of my favorite places to scuba dive because they've had more sharks there than any other place I've dove at. But anyway, um, let's get to the topic of the night, which is, usually I cover some news, but I think we're kind of drowning in that right now. Although I will say this, uh, I don't care what anybody says. That shooting was an inside job, inside job, inside job. I've talked to snipers in person. I've listened to the testimony of many former snipers online that have been putting out messages that have even worked security details, even with the Secret Service in the White House. And they all have said this is 100% absolutely no question an inside job. If knowing what I know from law enforcement and military, just on my own assessment, this is 100% an inside job. But I let the experts speak on it, and they're all saying that. They're all saying that. There's so much information now that things that don't add up, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, and I really don't want my show to be about politics, but this is such an important thing for our time, and it's important to know because we can't trust our government anymore. We're seeing this in the judicial system. We're seeing it in the FBI. We're seeing it in the Secret Service. We're seeing it in Homeland, and the ATF has gone straight out communist lately. I mean, straight out. I mean, they're off the charts in what they're doing right now. They're not even trying to go after criminals. It seems like they're just trying to go after decent people who might accidentally mess up just because there's so many insane laws. Someone who's not violent, not scary, those are the people they leave alone. And they target the people that, oh, you made a mistake on this little piece of paper, so now we're going to throw your butt in jail. I mean, it's crazy. That's not the intent of law. I can tell you, as a former law enforcement officer, when you arrest somebody and you have them in court, one thing you're trying to look at is, was this just a bad situation that any normal person would have reacted in? Or is this person an actual threat to society? That's something you need to judge because anybody can get caught up in a bad situation, you know? Um, but is someone generally a threat to society? That's a different case. And those we need to treat, you kind of need to treat those differently, you know? But in the world today, it's crazy. And not only that, you have one side government that is targeting the political opposition of the other side. Dude, that is like how you destroy freedom in a country. You know what I'm saying? That's insane. And I don't care how you feel in your politics. If you're wishing someone was dead from being shot, uh, you don't think right. You don't think like a human being, and you don't think like an American, and it's certainly the hell not Christian. And it's funny, I got to keep reminding Christians how to act like a Christian. I mean, I don't get it, you know? And that means behavior. I mean, even there's beef going on with show hosts that do these cryptid shows. There always is, and I try to avoid it. The sad thing is, man, these people say they're Christians, but they don't act like they're Christians. You know what I mean? They're not forgiving. Uh, they don't want relationship. They don't want to build. They don't want forgiveness. All they want to do is manipulate or cancel culture, which, by the way, that's evil too. That's not Christian. You know, that cancel culture comes part from hatred. You hate a person when you cancel them out of your life and you're like, I'm just ignoring this person. I'm just putting up the wall and they can go away. You do you kind of thing. No, we're supposed to be a community together. What does the Bible say? That if you have a dispute with your brother, don't let the sun set before you squash that thing, you know? Um, and all about forgiveness and coming together. And forgiveness isn't just canceling somebody. You try to help and work with people, even people you don't agree with. Now, there are at times people that are toxic to your life, and those people sadly need to be avoided. But that's not always the case, and it's not with everybody, and especially even with family today. Anyway, I'm ranting, but they're important issues. But the thing is, we can no longer trust our government. We can no longer trust our government. Our government has been taken over by globalist communists. If you study the French Revolution, you can understand what's going on right now in the United States. If you study the Bolshevik Revolution, you can understand what's going on right now in the United States. And in both of those situations, communists got involved, took over government, and took over the country and formed a coup, violent coup. And then when they got in office, they killed all the Christians. They killed all they said, we want you to turn in all your guns. Then they killed everybody. I mean, go study those. I mean, there's horrible. The French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution that took place in Russia. And by the way, Russia's coming out of that now. Most people don't understand that watch modern mainstream globalist propaganda media, and that's exactly what it is, and one-sided at that, even though they say Fox News, fair and balanced. Fox News, fair and balanced. Fox News, fair and balanced. Yeah, that's a mind control trick to try to convince you that their lies are truth. And they're not conservative news anymore. Do not listen to them. Do not follow them for news. Do not go to independent news sources where you can actually find a thing called journalism, where they actually investigate and not just read off of, looking for paper here, scripts like damn actors, not journalists. What the hell? Ask why they repealed the law where the government can use propaganda. Used to be a law you couldn't do that in the US. That was illegal. But they removed that law. Why? You think that was a good thing? No, not a good thing. Our country is not heading in a good place. When we're at the point where we're trying to assassinate presidents and political, political, I'm trying to find the word, political people that, candidates for president, whatever you want to call it, wrap it in whatever bow you want. It's the same thing. Our country is in a sorry and sad state. And I pray to God every day for peace in our country, that it doesn't lead to violence, civil war. And look, they want civil war just because it gives them an excuse to roll out a police state and military state. And then you're really screwed, See how much freedom you have then. You know what I'm saying? So we don't want that. And we don't want that for our opposition either. We don't want that, whatever your political thing is, you don't want the other side to be assassinated, or your side. That is not going to bode well for either side or for our country. All right. Or for the world for that matter, because things will spiral out. So pray, pray, pray. We are in a bad place. But that was a 100%. And that kid, I'm honestly, after watching everything I've watched and the time I've put into it, I really don't believe that kid fired a single round. I could be wrong. I don't believe that kid fired a single round. I think he was just a patsy. And you look at JFK, everything else. Lee Harvey Oswald, he was a patsy. He did not kill the president. I'm sorry. One of the leading experts in the world taught at my university on this subject. Used to have FBI agents standing in the class regularly, not every day, but often, with sunglasses on inside, which is really weird. I mean, it wasn't like they had start glasses back then where they're looking at, computers are meta, They just look stupid. Take off the damn sunglasses. You're inside, man. Come on. You know what I mean? You don't have to look like the Men in Black all the time. But anyway, yeah, Lee Harvey worked for intelligence. I won't say the name, but you can guess it right off the top of your head. And that's official. You follow his wife and who his wife was connected to, top politicians. It was all a setup, And so was this kid. In fact, now they're reporting that this kid was found with now I'm forgetting the word all of a sudden. This kid was found with triggering devices for bombs, like a cell phone trigger device kind of thing. That's a high level of technical and professional capability. That's not something that a little 20-year-old kid is going to come up with by himself. I'm sorry. That's not. Thank God that whatever that was did not go off. And that's another thing. I'm not concerned as much about um, politicians being taken out right now by guns. I'm worried that they're going to set off a low yield suitcase nuclear bomb in a city to make sure they level a couple of blocks just to make sure that they got the guy they were going after. That's what I'm concerned about. And believe me, that's on the table. And I also have prior knowledge of those exact weapons being real. And, we lost some of these. I won't give specifics, but we lost some of these devices. Where could they have gone? Who could have these devices? And how could we just lose like a number of suitcase, low yield tactical nuclear bombs? Oops. No one's fired over that, right? You're not hearing that one in the news, but it's real. So you better be praying against it, because that's the last thing we. And for the record, if that happens in our country and political leaders are removed as a result of that, especially when they're oppositions to the other side, then you doggone well know it was a setup and an inside job. I'm throwing that out there right now. It wasn't Iran. It wasn't Russia. Who Putin's saying, hey, I really trust Trump when he says that you can bring peace in the Ukraine war. And he just met with Zelensky, and Zelensky said, hey, I'll bring peace to Trump. Those are the only two people on planet Earth that are talking about peace instead of war. And I mean World War III war. The only two. And yet they're the two demonized in the media. Putin keeps saying, I keep calling people to de-escalate, to end war. And no one will return my phone call. They won't come to the table. The only two that say that they want peace is Putin and Trump. That's it. Everybody else, the globalists, they want war. And why do they want war? Because it's their great reset. That's what the great reset is. It's Agenda 21, renamed Agenda 2030, and now renamed Agenda 2025. Imagine that. They sure have to keep naming their stuff over and over, but it's the same damn crap. Pile of dung is what it is. They want to create a one world government. And that's really what I was going to come on and talk about tonight for the show. People asked me to tell my personal story, and I was going to tell some of my personal story and about how when I was a kid, God gave me visions and prophecies about the U.S. basically being destroyed in a nuclear war in the near future. And God gave me details about that. And that's what I was going to come on and talk about tonight. But I decided not to do that. And I decided, since fans were asking me to do a show on time travel on Montauk, I would do that instead. And I'm really trying to keep, like I said, politics and even too much religion on the channel, because I want it to be about, well, conspiracies and cryptids and that kind of stuff. But these are such important issues facing our time right now. And sometime I'll come on and talk about and tell what God told me about those things, because it's all coming true. And it's scary as hell. All I can say right now is love Jesus. He's the solution to everything. And two, love each other, because we are all brothers and sisters. I don't care what color this is. We all bleed red, and we all come from the same God. All of us. We're all children of the same God. That means we're all related. You know what you're going to find in heaven that most people don't understand right now? Is that your neighbor and other people that you might not like because of their skin color or whatever, that they're as much akin to you as your own blood family. Because in heaven, We're not separated by flesh. We're all the children of God, created by God, living together as family together, hopefully, if we reach heaven. All people. That's why war is such a bad thing. It's literally brother killing brother. Brother killing. Did I use the right pronouns? Yeah, suck it. Not in a, I don't mean that in any kind of like grotesque manner, just as a saying. Anyway, getting on with the show. Um, oh, by the way, too, that little boy that they try to set up as the little patsy. I mean, come on, you could have picked a better patsy than a 20-year-old kid who's like, what? Um, they said he's got like two, possibly three, but at least two offshore money accounts that are encrypted. And he had two cell phones encrypted. Really? 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 Yeah. Inside job, inside job, inside job. Now they're saying they think there were multiple shooters in other directions. And think about it. If you wanted to take out your political opponent, are you going to let the 20-year-old kid with like next to no experience do that job? No. You're going to have a professional that's going to do that job that you're going to rely on to get that job done. And it's still difficult, as we found out, for a professional, especially when you got God's help. Hey, I've been praying for this for years. I knew it was coming. Remember I told you God gave visions and prophecies? I'm not joking about that. The crap happens that I've been shown. And I'm not trying to say I'm kind of special, because I'm not. In any way, we all have different gifts, and for whatever reason, that was one that God gave me. And really, it's been more of a curse than anything else. It's caused a lot of problems with friends, with family. Um, and it's hard for me to let go of, because I know it. I know it as though I've lived it. And for 20 plus years, I've been telling people this stuff's coming. And most people, even my friends, don't want to hear it. People don't like hearing bad news. They like hearing good news. But people have like kind of like a security blanket. And then you tug on that security blanket, it gets ugly fast. All right. Enough of that. On to the show. So, time travel. This is a very in-depth subject and topic to cover. And you can cover it from many different aspects. It's very hard to do this topic justice. First of all, I'm going off of most of this just from the top of my head. I just don't have the time to sit and do like more research right now. This is all stuff I followed for years. So I already have a working knowledge of all this stuff and some players and some events involved. You may agree with them, you may disagree. That's fine. Go do your own. Never take what I say as being the end all be all. Go do your own research. The problem is most people I find don't do their own research. A lot of people are like, no, that didn't happen. No, but they don't. They're not even educated on the topic, like at all, at all. They're just arguing from a place of complete ignorance and telling you you're wrong when you've got the years of training and experience. Man, that bites my chicken. Anyway, so you know the Oppenheimer movie that came out recently, right? That's fantastic movie. Highly recommend it. I don't like the gratuitous sex scene just because I don't think it fit or had any place in the movie. But other than that, it was a fantastic movie. Just fantastic movie. They did an amazing job of really painting some of the political situations that were involved in that, and how too you do all that work for the government. They're like, thank you very much. Now go away. We don't need you anymore. You're insignificant. Get out of our life. Oh, in fact, we're going to accuse you of being a problem. Really? You see that just like in that movie they talked about. Even Einstein was like, hey, you might be the shiny apple today, but you're going to be the rotten, stinky fruit tomorrow. You know what I mean? That's an important thing, and that's something that happens a lot on that level and those people. So I'm glad that they took it from that vantage point in the film. But the film was fantastic. Now, as a side, the way the story goes, and where do I start with this? I'm only giving you one side of this story. There's different sides and different ways, all right? But I'm giving you one just to get you kind of a base for those that might not know or know little on this topic. It's said that during the Manhattan Project, which is what the Oppenheimer film was about, and they were trying to develop the bomb, right? That they dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in Japan, ending the war at great cost to human life and great suffering. Uh, it, so they built this bomb. Now they were working on high level physics that was mostly theory at the time. There were some other kind of physics that they discovered along the way, and one of those was out of the Manhattan Project. They came up with another side project from the research that they developed for the Manhattan Project. This happens a lot in scientific experiments, development, whatever. So in that, they decided, hey, we think we found a way with using physics and science, technology, that we could take a ship, a boat, a destroyer class craft, and we could make this radar invisible. So that would give us, and this was still around the time of World War II. Okay. So this was a huge thing. They were saying we could take a destroyer class ship and we could make it radar invisible so that our enemies can't see us coming. All right. Well, that led to a project called the Philadelphia experiment. And it was the terrifying Philadelphia experiment. Okay. So, what happened in the Philadelphia experiment is they took a team of 11 of the world's top scientists, including, this is something little known, Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla, all right, who's on the order of Albert Einstein just in for electricity instead of space and physics. Um, those two worked on this project together. Now, that's not often known. A lot of people debate that. I saw a photograph one time of the two of them in the 11-man main team for this project. They were all working on this together. They had the top minds in the world to work on this project. Their goal was to make the ship radar invisible. Now it's been a long time since I've reviewed all this, so I'm going off the top of my head. Excuse me if I get any little thing wrong, but basically, they wrapped the ship in like copper coils, and they ran large amounts of electricity, like super high amounts. And the idea was to change like the electromagnetic frequency of this thing to where it would become radar invisible. This ship left out of the harbor in Pennsylvania, hence um, the Philadelphia experiment, the name. It left out the harbor, it went out to the ocean. The name of the ship was the USS Eldridge. All right, the USS Eldridge. Now, what happened though is something happened. They're playing around with physics and science that they didn't know what they were messing with, and something horrible took place in the event. And when this happened, instead of the ship, the describers, the witnesses that were there, said there was like this green fog that like enveloped and surrounded the whole ship. All right. When they turned on this experiment, right? And basically, you had this boat out in the water, and then you had several Navy boats around it at a distance just to observe what was going on as it was taking place. You had high brass, all that kind of stuff. They're sitting there, on the deck watching. And so they're all watching this thing happen. And you got the people on the ship. Well, they said this strange green light came across the whole ship, and strange lights started happening. And in fact, what happened is everyone is sitting there watching. What witnesses claim is they said that this strange electricity starts going off around the ship. And instead of the ship becoming just radar invisible, which was apparently the goal, the whole ship vanished, disappeared in front of everybody. In front, people are like, "What the?" the whole ship gone, even the wake in the water. At first they said it became like translucent, where you could see like a wake in the water where the ship would be, and then boom, just completely gone. All right. Now the story gets a little complicated. Later it was recorded the ship reappeared back in the Philadelphia harbor where it had left from, and then disappeared again. Okay. Eventually, the ship finally reappeared in its original spot where everyone was looking for it. But something horrific happened. And that was people that were, especially on the outside of the ship when this experiment took place, when the ship reemerged, and I guess our dimension, if you want to call it our frequency dimension, sailors had body parts that merged with the bulkhead of the ship. So when the ship reemerged, you had sailors that were stuck in the metal bulkhead of the ship itself. Now, some people like just had an arm stuck in, and they're the lucky ones because you could cut the arm off. Others came back and were mostly in the ship, and they're just goners because metal and flesh don't go together. And this is why I say it was horrific, and it was horrific. All right. Imagine being in some kind of horror film and you're seeing these people sucked into the walls and screaming and yelling and in pain and panicking. And I mean, just mass hysteria. I mean, this is like out of the biggest science fiction horror film you can imagine. All right. So that was something that occurred. And I'll explain that a little bit. This is my hand. My hand is made up of a collection of atoms. All right. Okay. This wall is also made up of a collection of atoms. So why is it my hand cannot go through the wall? What's stopping my hand from going through the wall? Well, that's easy. Most scientists will say the atoms in my hand are actually repelling the atoms in the wall, and the wall vice versa. Why? Um, I should have thought of this beforehand, and of course, I don't. Um, it's electromagnetic frequency. Think of a combination lock on a locker in school. You have to have the right combination to get access in the locker. Same thing. What holds the atoms in my hand that says this is hand? What holds the atoms in this wall that says it's a wall? It's electromagnetic frequency. My hand has a locking mechanism, and that locking mechanism is electromagnetic frequency. This wall has its own locking mechanism. That's an electromagnetic frequency. All right. And the two, like a magnet, when you turn them opposite way, repel each other. Okay. That's why these atoms are not sharing. They're not absorbing each other. They're resisting. They're blocking. Now, let's take that concept one step further. The electromagnetic frequency that says my hand is hand doesn't just bind me and my flesh to location. It also binds me and my flesh to time. Time and space. They go together. Einstein, they're inseparable. They are the same thing. The fabric of the universe, time and space. You cannot affect space without affecting time. You cannot affect time without affecting space. Thinking like the movies, like Interstellar, where they're in a spaceship and they go down to a planet and they come back and it's been like 20 years when they were gone 2 hours. And that goes back to Einstein's law of relativity. That's real. That's real. Astronauts that go up in space, when they come back, their clocks are different than ours. Now, it's nominal difference. If they were to go light years at light speed and come back, we would all be much older here, like by many, many years, when they would all still be the same age, or, just a few days older, where we would be like, We could be generations older. That's Einstein's law of relativity, all right? Space and time. That's like wormholes and stuff. It's the folding and bending of space and time, and you've all seen this, you know. Uh, so you have the diagram. Just since we're on the topic, you know, in science, we're all taught what's the fastest point between two lines, or the fastest way to travel between 2 points, and that is a straight line. All right, by definition. However, on higher level physics, that is false. The fastest way to 2 points is not a straight line. It's to fold time and space to bring those 2 points together. And that's how time travel in a very rudimentary way can work. And that's how wormholes work. And the wormholes are very real. They're very real. They're like the highways of space, like Star Trek, you know, wormhole. When they're traveling in a hyperdrive, they're traveling in hyperspace. All right. Um, and that's a form of you know, traveling through time faster, you know. But with the wormhole, you potentially could get from here to another galaxy almost instantly just by going through the wormhole. Now, I won't go into all the physics on wormholes, or like a white hole is inverted to a black hole with a stabilization at the center point of the singularity from the event horizon that causes the wormhole. If you can stabilize it, I won't go into all that. I've had a hobby for years in theoretical physics. Love that stuff. But I can never really be a physicist because I'm really poor at spelling and math. Don't ask me to spell. I'm gotten much better at it, but don't ask me to spell, and I'm horrible at math. If I was better at math, I would be a physicist. But I can understand theoretical physics very well, and I love it. I just can't make proofs. All right. Anyway, um, so you understand now the time and location, electromagnetic frequency. So in the ship, when they altered the electricity of this ship in this experiment, and the ship disappeared, what happened is they unknowingly unlocked the electromagnetic frequency that held the ship in this time and space. Hence, the ship disappeared. It no longer was in this time and space. All right. And when the ship came back, all right, and people were merged with the bulkhead of the ship with their body parts, all right, again, that was the unlocking of the electromagnetic frequency. So it confused the locking system that holds my hand to hand and the wall to wall. And when that got confused, because it's like opening the chain, the combination lock on the locker in school. You have the right frequency, you have the right combination, you can open it and have access. So what happened is they opened that and the two merged together. And then when they came back into this space-time reality, whatever controls this didn't know where to separate the electromagnetic frequency because it had been altered in such a way that it didn't know where these people's position was when they came back. And so people merged with the bulkhead of the ship, causing a nightmare of a situation. Now, it goes on from there. The government did what the government does best and tries to cover all this up. For the soldiers that were not affected, most of them on the inside, and that's more than likely because they were protected. They were in steel and metal inside the ship, so they were protected from a lot of the electromagnetic frequency waves that were attacking the outside of the ship through the experiment. So people on the inside acted more as a Faraday cage, especially if they had bulkheads sealed and doors on the inside. So more people on the inside were protected from this horrific nightmare situation. But some still high crazy took place. Sailors that seemed like they were okay from the experiment, they went ahead and gave them leave, and many of them were going to like see family and stuff like that. Some of them went to bars to go drinking with their buddies. Common things, especially for swabs back in the day. some odd things started happening. There are stories that there was a bar fight of basically like some Navy guys and Army guys or something to that effect, which, was very common, especially back in the day. Hey, bar fights were very common back in the day when men were men, not the little snowflakes they are today, where, oh my God, that's toxic masculinity. You had a bar fight? Dude, that was common back in the day. MPs broke up bar fights all the time. When I was coming up in the state police, they said one bar fight, one trooper. That was the rule. I didn't get to break up any bar fights. I listened to all this stuff and don't get to play. I didn't have my shot, didn't have my chance. And that's because of the snowflake generation. Anyway, so there were stories that in these bar fights, that some of these sailors that had been on that ship involved in that experiment, people claimed that they started to become like translucents. Like 1 second they look normal, the next second they look like translucents, and back to normal, back to translucents, like they're phasing. All right. And then poof, they disappeared, gone in front of like a crowded room. Imagine you're in a bar fight with some dude and he disappears in front of you. You're going to be like, whoa, I think I've been drinking too much. Pass me another one, Sam. There was other stories too where you had sailors that met with their family. And there was one story where this guy met with his wife and child. And the wife asked for something. And the husband was like, who's the sailor, was like, oh, yeah, I forgot that. He's like, oh, give me a second. I'll get that and come right back. Got up and walked right through a wall and never came back. Things like that. Like there was lots of stories like that. Anyway, when it comes to the story of the ship, all right, again, it was the USS Eldridge, a destroyer class ship. And they did this crazy experiment with electromagnetic frequency, pumping huge amounts of electricity through this thing, playing with high levels of physics that they didn't understand at the time, and had the result that they did. Philadelphia experiment. It's hard for me to read small like this. The Philadelphia experiment was an alleged event claimed to have been witnessed by an ex-merchant mariner named Carl M. Allen at the United States Navy Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. United States sometime around October 28th, 1943. Allen described an experiment where the U.S. Navy attempted to make a destroyer escape the USS Eldridge disappear in a bizarre results that followed. All right. Bizarre results that followed. Yeah, I'll say. Okay. Now, important to this story is this man. This man's name is Al Bielek. Man, he was old a long time ago. There's no way he's still alive today. I mean, he could be, but he was old back in the day because this is an old story. This is Al Bielek. I took this shot from YouTube. Well, I tried to get some videos I could put on here to show y'all, but the only videos I could find were like hours long. I tried to even download some of them to do clips, and it just didn't happen. So I apologize for that. I tried my best, but I'll give you the information. You can go look up this video. All right, Al Bielek, alternative future timelines and time travel. He's going to say some crazy stuff now, but you look for what he says about the USS Eldridge. This man claims that he and his brother, all right, were on the ship when this experiment took place. All right. He claims that him and his brother Duncan were on the ship. In fact, they were the ones in the control room. In this man's story, like they were in the control room that turned the project on and off. Okay. And this guy's story gets really cray. All right. Gets crazy. All right. And I'll try to bring you down that little rabbit hole. Al Bielek in the Philadelphia experiment. Oh, by the way, they made a movie about this. I love when they make movies about this kind of stuff. This is an old film, The Philadelphia Experiment. And by the way, I love this movie. It's a cheesy old 80s film. And I love cheesy old 80s films. I just love them. Anyway, and I love this as a kid. But anyway, this is a movie they made about it, and they do show in this movie that the ship disappeared and people wound up in the bulkhead of the ship. So they followed the lore of what happened in the Montauk experiment. The only problem with it is that's only half of the story. Only half. Okay. So the first half of the story is the experiment that they did. Okay. That made the ship go invisible. There's a book. Oh no, John Carpenter. This is about the like, movie, I guess. Philadelphia Experiment. This is a picture from the movie where they did a great job of showing this kind of strange vortex of light. And I wanted to switch gears here for a second. I'm going to come back to Al Bielek and his story because that continues on. But for first, I'm going to take a little side tangent that is related, believe it or not, and that is to this man. Many of you should be familiar with this man, William Bill Cooper. All right. Bill Cooper, excuse me, Bill Cooper, he wrote this book, Behold a Pale Horse. And many of you probably know this book. If not, try to find it. I think it's out of print and it's super expensive now, but it's a fantastic book. And this guy was way ahead of his time. And this book opened a lot of people and a lot of eyes. This guy worked in naval intelligence, and he reveals a lot of stuff even in the 80s about the new world order and their taking over of the United States government, world governments, and creating a one world government, which is their great reset. All right. Gee, we don't see anything like that going on in our world today. This man, go listen to his stuff, read his books. He warned us everything that's going on right now before it happened. Even some stuff like that we can't get into. All right. He warned of a lot of stuff before it happened. He said he witnessed. I listened to him give a talk one time where he said he witnessed a ship, a craft, in a naval yard, appear in the harbor out of nowhere, like it just visibly just shifted into our dimension. And he saw that. He witnessed this. He saw it happen. That a ship just appeared in the harbor where he was, in a naval harbor. And I don't know if he's. I don't think he said it disappeared. He saw it materialize from out of nothing in the harbor, and he saw the whole thing happen. And he gave testimony to that. He also will talk about Al Bielek, and he'll refer back to the Philadelphia experiment. All right, and a lot of other stuff. This man, oh man, he hit on so many major topics back in the day. He was a big fan of and collaborated Phil Schneider, who was the one that dug down on top of the Dulce alien base and shot an alien, and an alien shot him with some kind of a laser that, like he said, melted like I think 2 or 3 fingers off his hand. Um, and um, and that guy was going public about alien technology, secret space program, underground military bases, our U.S. government working with aliens. Even he had pictures. He's like, "You see this alien? Yeah, that's my dad standing next to him in the lab coat. Yeah, these are all the people on the project with the little alien right in the middle of us. Here's the photograph. And this is from back in the day. It was before Photoshop. Before we had that. It's called Kodak. Anyway, so he said that there was 12 attempts made on his life to kill him. 12 attempts. Well, the 13th one succeeded. The official police report is he suicided himself. The only problem is he was strangled with a garden hose from behind. All right, in it while he was in a wheelchair. How do you commit suicide by someone strangling you from behind? The guy only had 2 fingers on one hand. It's not like he's doing all kinds. He didn't hang himself in the wheelchair. Someone strangled him from behind, and yet it was a suicide. But you know what? Ben Rich, who leaked all the the Democratic information on and Hillary information to WikiLeaks also got suicided. Well, he didn't get suicided, he got robbed. But the only problem is the robbers that murdered him, they didn't take his wallet, they didn't take his fancy watch, they didn't take his keys, but he was robbed. See how that works? Right. Yeah, and a 20-year-old kid who knows nothing is going to be able to make a shot to try to assassinate a potential president. Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. All right. So I just wanted to go by and besides, if you get a chance to read this book, I have a copy of it. It's fantastic. You can also get audio versions if you can't find a physical version. I think I've got an audio version on this. On And I love listening to audiobooks when I travel. So yeah, get that if you can. It's fantastic. It's old, but it's great, and it'll wake you up to a lot of stuff that's going on right now, right here, today. All right. Anyway, getting back to the story. So back to Al Bielek. Al Bielek, because Al Bielek claims that he and his brother were on the ship in the control room. They were in charge of turning the experiment on and off. Now, in his story, he says that they were on the bridge of the ship. They turned this thing on, and he said that they could see that craziness was going on everywhere on the outside and inside that room. They said that electricity was arcing. When electricity gets strong enough, it tends to arc, all right, where it'll come out of stuff and like it'll like lightning. It'll actually reach itself from different points to form an arc from a room, across a room. And he says that they got scared and didn't even want to turn it off because it was arcing electricity everywhere. Well, when things got really crazy enough, he and his brother were like, dude, we got to get out of here. And he's like, yeah, we need to get out of here. So what they did was they decided to open the door, and their idea was they were going to jump off the side of the ship into the water. That's what they claimed they did. They said that, and this was also, I think, partly in that movie. But they jumped off the ship. Al Bielek and his brother Duncan jumped off the ship, okay, as a way to try to escape what was going on in the craziness of the experiment. All right. Well, as the ship was going crazy and they tried to jump off, and what they perceived was the water. Okay, what they perceived was the water, but something weird happened here. So when they jumped off and they were falling, they didn't hit any water. All right, they're falling through this hole or something, and they're falling, and all of a sudden they hit ground. Okay, and when they hit the ground, okay, it was at this location. All right, and in front of the strange tower. They didn't no water anywhere. There's a strange light, strange effects, blah blah blah. They hit the ground, and they're looking at this strange tower. Now, guess what this tower just happened to be? This antenna array. Boom! Welcome to Montauk. And if you recognize the little cartoonish figures here, all right, on the left you've got L, and on the right you've got the creature from Stranger Things, and that is because it is the Montauk Project that was, in fact, the actual inspiration for the television show Stranger Things, also known as Camp Hero. Camp Hero, and I'll get into why it's called Camp Hero. But Camp Hero, the Montauk Project, which inspired Stranger Things. And it's also known as the Montauk Project. Here's an actual picture of what the facility looked like, at least from the surface. Probably is an underground facility, but this is what it looks like from the surface, and it's iconic with this giant antenna array. Very kind of high tech for its time. All right. Here's another book, Beyond the Philadelphia Experiment, the Montauk Project. All right. Montauk Survivors, Time Travel, Nikola Tesla, How to Build a UFO. Man, that's a lot all in one thing, but you know what? They all go together. They all go together. So here's what happened. I'll go to the next picture. Was Stranger Things real? The answer, yes. The television show wasn't real, obviously, but it was inspired by true events that involved Al Bielek and also involved the Philadelphia experiment. Notice what it says right here on this newspaper that the arrow is pointing to. I don't like saying the letters of that agency for different reasons the public's not aware of. But when I refer to intelligence agencies that are the greatest threat to our country, not China, not Russia, but the communist takeover within our own country, this is the culprit behind it all. Just ask JFK, who said, I'm going to destroy that agency because they do not protect or serve the United States interest, but they are serving their own agenda. And he said he was going to destroy that agency and put it to the four winds of the earth. And yet he's dead, assassinated, and they're still here running the show. And I claim that they ran the office of the presidency, by the way, side tangent, from that point on in the United States. That was like an all-in moment. You know, you play poker, you go all in. That was an all-in moment. Kennedy wasn't the only person killed. There were hundreds of key people in government that were killed around this time, but everyone was only focused on, oh my God, our president has been assassinated. And it was our own government that assassinated that man. The records to this day are still kept against the American public and will not be released, that are top secret. Why? If you have nothing to hide. It's not that aliens came and saved the president's life. So why are you hiding it? You see what I'm saying? So there's no reason other than the fact that it's covering up evidence of players involved and who did it. All right. Anyway, I digress, but it's related to our time. Do not trust what's going on. Our government has been taken over. All right. That's why you see things like free speech and cancel culture, which is communism. It's not American, it's communism. That's why you see those things being attacked. That's why every time I get new subscribers to my show, the next day, more subscribers are taken away or canceled from my show every single time. That's why I got multiple fans calling me up saying, man, I subscribe and I get automatically unsubscribed from the channel, you know, or I'm not getting my notifications. Yeah, it's called shadow banning. They don't like the topics you're talking about, but you know what? I don't care. I'm here for truth while we still have the freedom and truth to be able to get that out. Okay, so again, it was Montauk that was the inspiration for Stranger Things, and it was the real camp hero. Oop, from above. It was the real camp hero. Okay. Fact or fiction, the Montauk Project. And here they show there are photographs of children that are being tested on in the Montauk Project. That's why it's very similar to what was given to us in the movie. There are real, or the TV series rather. There are real photographs out of the Montauk Project that show kids being tested on. Now, this gets a little complicated. There's multiple things that were going on here at once. So, for the sake of keeping things clear, I'm just going to stick with Al Bielek for right now. Then, when I'm done explaining Al Bielek's story, I will swing back to L's story, or the story of the children that were being tested on at Montauk. All right. And that comes out of MK Ultra. All right. I'm sure many of y'all have heard that term before, MK Ultra. But I'll swing back to that. Going back to Al Bielek and his story. So him and his brother Duncan freak out on the ship. They're in fear of their lives. They decide they've got to get off the ship. They see that there's screaming and yelling going on the ship outside. So they don't want to just leave the room that they think is becoming too dangerous with the arc and electricity. They want to get off the damn ship. And I don't blame them. I probably would have been thinking the same thing. But they jumped off the ship and they did not land in the water as they expected. Instead, they landed here at Montauk. All right. It was at night. And all of a sudden, Al Bielek describes, he says that all of a sudden a helicopter comes out of the sky and lands there. Now, remember, he just jumped off a ship in World War II. We didn't have helicopters like that, like we have today at that time. Now he had known about them from military kind of scuttlebutt and stuff like that. There were plans and designs for that kind of stuff, but never saw one. I don't believe working, if I remember the story correctly. So that kind of freaked him out a little bit. But a helicopter landed and picked up him and his brother. They were brought into the base, and they gave him a briefing, which is typical military thing to do when you're involved in any kind of experiment, or you're being what's called, another thing's called being read in. Being read in is when kind of top secret or project information is it has to be explained to you because now it is relevant to you or your situation or your task, et cetera, et cetera. So they brought him in the base, they debriefed him, which means at first they would have put him in a cold room and they would have asked him a whole bunch of questions. They would have given them no answers. I mean, they ask you all the questions. They won't let you ask any questions. They're like, first you, and then after that, they'll give you the read in where they'll brief you on what's going on. Okay. And at that point, um at that point, they explained to Al Bielek. Al Bielek's still trying to figure out what in the world, is going on right now. What in the world is happening, right? And so he explained to them, or the military explained to Al Bielek and his brother. They were probably in separate rooms too, because they always separate you, just like in law enforcement, they would separate. Um, but anyway, so they tell Al Bielek, you're not in the 50s anymore. You are in like 1982 or like 1984. And he's like, yeah, right. That's BS. Like you can understand that would be kind of hard for a person to understand or to get around their head, right? But they told him, you are not in your time. You were in the future. And it is like 19, I think it was 82 or 84, something like that. Um, and he really struggled with trying to believe them, but they showed him, they had current magazines of modern magazines of the day, like Time magazine, like Popular Mechanics magazine, stuffs like that, 80s magazines. And looking through them, he could see the dates. He could see things in there that didn't exist in his time. And they showed him television, which was all in color now. But they said that one thing that really stuck out to him was he saw commercials, and one of the commercials was like for like Delta Airlines or like United Airlines or Pan Am at the time. Or he saw commercials for airplanes that didn't exist in his time, especially to that degree in size, like a 747. It was new in the 80s. So he started to kind of understand what was going on. Now they went on to explain this high crazy story to Al Bielek, according to Al Bielek's testimony. Al Bielek said that they told him, we understand that you were involved in the Philadelphia experiment that involved the ship going invisible. And they said, well, you accidentally stumbled upon time travel. All right. You all the physics and the physicists and the scientists and the experiment, you accidentally discovered time travel, but you didn't do it right. And the ship, they said, was basically never returned. All right. They said the ship was never returned. And they said the ship was actually stuck in time. All right. It was stuck in some kind of vortex, interdimensional vortex in space time, that the ship never returned and was stuck in this space time. Now, these people at Montauk further went on to explain to Al Bielek and his brother Duncan. All right. They explained to him that aliens, like outer space aliens, approached us and said, listen, y'all are messing up. Like, you have no idea that this stupid little, stuff you're playing with that you don't understand is messing up time space in a major way for us. in the rest of the galaxy. And they said that you have got to end this. They said, we will help you, but you have got to find a way to go back to that ship and turn it off so that it will go back to where it started from in the Philadelphia harbor, or waters off Philadelphia, wherever they were doing the experiment, close to Philadelphia harbor. So that's what they told Al Bielek and his brother. And then they used advanced technology that they had through the cooperation and working with aliens. And they sent Al Bielek and his brother Duncan back in time. All right. Back in time. And they sent them back to the ship so that they could turn off the power, and the ship rematerialized. So in history, the ship came back only because they finally went back into time and were able to shut it off. And that's the story. And that's actually captured in this movie. In this movie, the ship was stuck on in time, space, causing a catastrophe, of stuff that we didn't understand. And they had to literally send this actor who played basically Al Bielek. They had to send him back to the ship in hyperspace, interdimensional space, whatever you want to call it, in this crazy vortex. And he had to smash the consoles and find a way to turn off the electronics on the ship so that the ship could properly power down, and the ship could return to its original time. And so that's what even the movie was about. But that's the story of Al Bielek. So Al Bielek, again, was on the USS Eldridge. They did the crazy experiment. Everything went insane. He and his brother got scared and decided they're going to jump off the ship in the middle of this experiment. They don't hit water, they hit land, and somehow fall into Long Island, all right, in New York. And then they're taken in by the military at the Montauk base, and that they're told that this thing is still stuck in time and space, but we're working with aliens, literal aliens, that are helping us with technology to be able to send them back to the ship to where they could turn it off, and then the ship could finally rematerialize back where it started from. All right. Now, when it rematerialized back where it started from, that's where they found that all these people, especially on the outside of the ship, that their flesh and blood had merged with the bulkhead of the metal and the outside of the ship itself. Okay. So that's when that happened. But that didn't happen until Al Bielek actually went back in time through the Montauk Project, which is part of the Montauk Project, had different functions, but part of it was to go back in time travel. All right. Space and time travel. And I'll go and explain in that next. And then other parts of that same thing at Montauk, where we're dealing with the kids. Um, Hold on one second. So, so that's the story so far. Now, so apparently, according to Al Bielek, he and his brother Duncan went back. They turned it off, and it reappeared. So problem solved. They found the guys in the bulkheads. Other people supposedly, disappeared um, in the in the bulkhead of the ship. I mean, disappeared by phasing out of reality. So that's that story. Now, the aliens at Montauk. Um, that goes into a different part of the story. Now, I talked about Al Bielek, but now we've got to go to some other eyewitnesses that claim kind of the rest of the story from that point. And then I will swing back to MK Ultra and how it inspired the show. Okay, but now we have to go to these two people. All right, these two people. I watched this a long time ago. I believe it was officially aired on Project Camelot with was it Kathleen Kennedy? Am I saying that right? Cassidy, uh, Miss Cassidy, on Project Camelot. All right. And here is a reference. This is one of the videos I tried several times to download so I could play it here. I was unable to, but you can go look it up here. Look at channel 3X is the channel, and you need to type that in first. Otherwise, it gets hard to find. And then type in the title, Philadelphia Experiment and the Montauk Project. And he plays this original interview with these two men. Now, who are these two men? This first one right here, his name is Preston B. Nichols. He's a scientist and electronics engineer. Between 1970 and 1983, he was an assistant director of the research projects being conducted at Montauk, Long Island. Okay. His friend next to him, all right, this guy looks like he's from Star Trek. Duncan Cameron is a physics trained physicist trained by NASA in the techniques of virtual realization. I'll explain that more in a minute. He was a participant in the original Philadelphia experiment and subsequently a key participant in the Montauk Project. Now, listen to those words carefully. He, Duncan Cameron, he was a participant in the original Philadelphia experiment and subsequently a key participant in the Montauk Project. All right. The way that's worded is because you remember when I told you. So they said he was actually involved in the Philadelphia experiment itself originally. Okay. This man in yellow looks like he's on the bridge of Star Trek. All right. They say he was actually involved in the experiment and he later worked at Montauk. How is that possible? All right. He doesn't look like he's that old, right? Well, remember the story started off with this man, Al Bielek. Remember I said that Al Bielek's brother was with him and jumped off the ship with him? And his brother's name was Duncan. And this is Duncan. This is Al Bielek's brother. Okay? Al Bielek's brother, Duncan. Duncan Cameron is a physics trained it means physicist trained by NASA in the technique of visual realization. He was a participant in the original Philadelphia experiment and subsequently a key proponent in the Montauk Project. So this almost suggests I get a little fuzzy on the story because it's a long time, very old, and I haven't heard it in a long time. Like I said, I'm going off of memory. It's possible. Look how old Al Bielek is. Al Bielek had to be sent back to turn off the ship. It's possible his brother stayed here from that time and stayed here. I don't know. He looks awfully young right here. Or I don't know. They might have done some time experiment where they pulled his butt back. I don't know. But it said that he was trained in a virtual realization. Now, what does that mean? Virtual realization. That's referring to this. There's this thing called the Montauk chair. All right. When you research this stuff, you find out about the Montauk chair. All right. I actually have something in here that talks about the chair somewhere. Looking for it. I'm not seeing it. Something in here. We'll come across it. Refers to the Montauk chair. But anyway, maybe I just put this picture in here. Is this it? Time travel, position, mind, teleportation, mind control. Yeah, see, mind control is another thing from all this. Anyway, it turns out when I said that the aliens came to help us, from what I understand, the aliens that came to help us were basically reptilians, and they had a subservient group that were like little grays, and little grays are like the short, big-headed people you see in all the alien movies or depictions of an alien, right? The big bulbous round head with the large eyes, right? Those are called like the little grays because they're short. Now they do have tall grays that are like kind of supervisor or scientist type, but you got little grays that are like the worker bees, all right? And then you got reptilians, the lizard looking people. They're like in charge of the overall experiment kind of thing. But they said that these men, Preston and Duncan claimed, and you can go, like I said, go look this up and listen to their own story. It's about an hour to 2 hours long, maybe hour and a half. But listen to them tell their own story. They said they worked with these aliens in the Montauk Project, which is a very high level, top secret project. And the Montauk Project had several things it was working on. One was time travel. Another was um, another was other physics things that would go along with time travel, not necessarily time travel, but things that would be related to that. All right. So when they're playing in the same sandbox of physics, they're gonna play with other toys that they find in the sandbox. Does it make sense at all? um, there's other interesting avenues of science they learn from learning this stuff, so they're exploring lots of things, not just the one thing. But one of the major things was time travel. Okay, and this was a very particular form of time travel. um, Another thing though, but this branched off as well into other areas like MK Ultra. A lot of MK Ultra experiments went on here with the little kids. They were trying to weaponize the kids to a degree. That was weaponizing the kids, making them like psychic warriors, if you want, like L and Stranger Things. That was one of the purposes of the experiments that went on with the children at Montauk. But that's not it. There were thousands of different things that they were doing with these kids. Part of it was just learning mind control. How do you manipulate the human brain through technology or through persuasion or through electromagnetic frequencies? How can we plant stuff in your head? How can we rework your brain or control how you think from audible tones, from frequencies, from big antenna arrays? How can we affect a town? How can we manipulate these people to behave in manners we desire them to behave in? These were all experiments from Montauk, Long Island, Plum Island, Camp Hero, and from MK Ultra. All right. So I'll go back to this. So these guys said that they were working with aliens. And by the way, Preston Nichols is a character and was telling some funny stories. He said that, in every government facility, you have like your cleaning equipment and they have like government issued like Lysol, straight up Lysol. And that made me laugh my butt off because yeah, in police and in military and police, every building we have has cans of Lysol for cleaner. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've got that smell stuck in my head from using that in the military and in law enforcement facilities. But he said they found that when they sprayed these little gray aliens with Lysol, it made them drunk. Like their physiology was completely different than us. He said they like drinking Drano. Like it didn't they enjoyed it. Like it didn't hurt them like it would kill us, but it didn't hurt them and they enjoyed it. And they said that they spray them with Lysol and it really made them drunk. Like they said they kept getting in trouble because they kept spraying these little jokers, making them like drunk with this stuff. But anyway, the story goes on. So getting back to the chair. The chair, from the way that Preston and Duncan described this, the chair was basically the navigational the way they created the chair at Montauk is it was salvaged equipment. And it was salvaged equipment from a fallen UFO crash. All right. Now, the chair that was a navigational system for this UFO that crashed. All right. And we were able to salvage it, and we were able to get it working. Now, remember what I said before, that time and space are linked together, right? So essentially, every spacecraft to some degree is a time machine to some degree. So by using, and a lot of these spaceships have the ability not just to travel through space, but can to travel through time or dimensions. All right. Um, so when they set up this navigational chair from a UFO crash, this chair had abilities that it was used to operate the spacecraft, especially for navigating and piloting the ship. But they repurposed it in the Montauk Project to basically be a type of time machine. And the way they describe it is they said that you could have an operator. Now, it took special training to be able to operate this chair. Not anyone could do it. Kind of like L in Stranger Things. All right. Ah, here's the Montauk chair. That's what I was looking for. Stranger Things, fact or fiction. The Montauk Project, the Montauk chair. So they had to train these kids, like almost like psychic kids, to be able to operate and make the chair work, function properly. And it was not something that the average person could do. They had to experiment on children to see who had the mental capacity and gifts to be able to make the chair actually function, because it wasn't designed for our physiology. It wasn't designed for a human host. However, with some direction and training, we could train talented, gifted people, kids, that could operate the chair and make it function properly. Well, one of the best people they ever found that could make the chair function properly was Duncan. Was Duncan. And that's why he's so important to the story. And that's why, going back to his description, they said he was a participant in the original Philadelphia experiment and subsequently a key participant in the Montauk Project. And Duncan Cameron was trained by NASA, but I'm not NASA. I keep saying NASA, NSA. That's um, National Security Agency, also known as No Such Agency. Remember Edward Snowden? That's who he worked for. And I can tell you this, that agency, and it's another name I don't like to say a lot. That's why I refer to it commonly as No Such Agency, which insiders do. And that agency, they were created after the Roswell crash in order to monitor alien communication systems. That was their original purpose they were created for. Now they spy on every single thing you do or say in social media or your phone or a text message or in any electronic form of communication. Anything you've ever said in any of these forms, anything you've ever written or texted, anything you've ever done or said in social media, that agency records it in hubs and can go back to use that information against you at any time that they so desire. They also track everyone you talk to, every place you go to, everything. And they tell you that Congress wants to cry about TikTok. Dude, TikTok's not the problem. It's our own government that's the problem. I promise you. TikTok's not going to hurt you. And they don't spy on you any more than Facebook, Meta, all these other social media. They spy the crap out of you and steal your data, not to mention all the free data you give them. I mean, even the NSA couldn't get all the data that we just put on Facebook. Oh yeah, I went to Sherry's. I'm going to have ice cream. Yeah, I mean, we give them we give them all our information. Oh, I like the color red. You know what I mean? Anyway, when it says that he was trained in technique of visual realization, right there, what they are referring to, the technique of visual realization, they are specifically referring to the chair. That's what that's about. They're referring to the operation of the chair. Okay. Now it said that when you had someone that had the ability to work this thing, like Duncan Cameron did, um, And they had several people and kids that they used in experiments to operate the chair. He, from my understanding, was the best. He was the best. He had just a natural connection ability to be able to, his brain worked in such a way that he could operate the chair. Now, the way they describe this thing is phenomenal, and it's way beyond things I've heard in a lot of even theoretical physics talk and stuff. But the way that they describe the way the chair functioned is that you visualize something in your brain, like you visualize, say, say like 1942. You'd say you visualize the USS Eldridge caught in time and space. They said with the ability of the chair and a whole lot of power and your brain as like the navigator, on really, if you visualize on this thing, there was a screen in front of you, and it would take the image of your brain that you're concentrating on. And by the way, our brains are supercomputers that stand outside of space and time. All right, I won't go into huge detail on that right now. Got too much to get through. Um, but that said, so when you could visualize this, it would come out on a screen in front of you. Well, with enough power and juice in this thing, they said that the picture wasn't just a picture. It actually opened a portal, a literal portal. And you could walk through that portal and be in that space and time just from the person back in the chair, visualizing, connecting with the help of the ability of the chair and a lot of power. They could focus and they could open up a wormhole in time and space just from thought and desire, and you could walk through that wormhole. That's how I believe the aliens helped helped us build the technology with the recovered, repurposed chair, all right, in the Montauk facility, and helped train us on it so that Duncan or whoever it may have been Duncan at the time. I don't remember. It's been like 20 years. Duncan had the ability to open that. So they had to open this interdimensional portal somehow to get Al Bielek back to the ship so he could return back to his original time in time and space. Now, it might be that Duncan just stayed behind, ended up working with the project, and only Al Bielek went back. I don't know. You have to go listen to the original story. It's, like I said, it's been a really long time. But anyway, that's the story and the operation of the chair. If you could think it, you could do it. Now, what's interesting about this? What's interesting about this? Um, I have a friend of mine who I've been trying to get on the channel, and he had a near-death experience, and he died. I don't know why they call it near-death, because people who have the near-death experiences, they die. They just come back. So why would you call it near-death? It should be like post-death, but they call it near-death. It's not near. No, it's past. You died. Send me a postcard. Anyway, so my friend who passed away, he went to basically heaven. Okay, and he had he went through a judgment, just like everyone talks about. And he said one thing he said that was interesting about that judgment. He said that judgment, he didn't remember everything about it. He said it was too long. He said, but it was so detailed that what he does remember is he kicked a bottle cap when he was walking down the side of a train track one day as a kid. And he said they stopped the life judgment and asked him, why did you kick that bottle cap? And he's like, huh? What? Like, you're going to ask me something that's kind of like insignificant as why I kicked a bottle cap as a kid? He's like, that's how detailed your life judgment actually is. He's like, that's what I remembered from it, he said. He says, I remembered it was that detailed that they wanted to ask you even about like the most insignificant thing. And it was like that. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. And he did too. But he said that he had a guardian angel after that, basically, that was kind of assigned to him. That, I don't know if it was his guardian angel in life, it probably was. But he said that his guardian angel kind of took him on like a tour of heaven. And and he would ask the angel things like, he asked the angel if there was other like alien life in the universe. Was there other intelligent life God created? And he said that basically, I'm paraphrasing, but he said the same thing I've heard many, many others say the exact same thing, basically, which was, I would be a very small God if you were the only intelligent life I created in this universe. And not only is this in the universe full of life, teeming with life is the actual word that was used, I believe, that I've heard multiple times. Um, um, he says, but there are multiple universes and they're all teeming with life. See, we only really have the concept of the universe that we're in now, the perceivable universe, the known universe, as they call it. That said, physics and scientists now are starting to say, no, like with CERN and all that, there are multiple universes that run parallel to our own, you know? So there are multiple universes. And oftentimes God in heaven describes that not only is our universe teeming with intelligent life, but there's multiple universes all teeming with life. Now, some people think that that's a great threat to our faith and theology and Christianity. It's not. It's really not. It just means that God is amazing. Is amazing. And by the way, we always call God what? The creator. Shocker. What does he do? He creates life. He created life long before us, and he'll create life long after us. That's what he does. He's the creator. And the creator, in when I studied theology and philosophy, they taught us there's no movability in God. There's no change in God. Once God commits to something like creating life, he never stops for eternity. For eternity, he'll be creating new life. Humans have to get off of this narcissistic trip that we think we're just the end all be all of the universe. We're so narrow minded. It's not a threat that there's other life out there, that God is greater than we expected. You know, who can understand God? We know very little about God. What we know is great, and we learn most of that through theology, not philosophy. But philosophy, we come to know that there is a God. Through theology, we learn relationship, who He is, who we are, how we are to interact together. Anyway, that's a different topic. So, getting back. Oh, so my friend said that he asked, and he was shown different types of other, and what we would call alien life, and he spoke to some of them, and that was really interesting. But he also said he asked the angel what other planets were like, and he said that his angel took him to other planets. They walked on other planets, and he said something that I'd already kind of learned, but it was still interesting to hear him say. He said that when an angel decides to travel in space and time, and they're not limited by time or space, all they have to do is think, I want to be here, and boom, they're there. And that's kind of like how the Montauk chair worked when you had the right conditions, with the ability of the technology of the chair, with high amounts of power, and a person that had the capability of actually utilizing the function of the chair. When you had those three things in conjunction, then they were able to literally open up portals in space and time. And that's why in Montauk, they did experiments on time travel. Now, the whole purpose of the Montauk, the whole main purpose, like I said, it branched off into thousands of things. It really did. But the main purpose was we had to build this facility in order to go back in time and get this ship, the USS Eldridge, out of hyperspace, out of the vortex that was causing some kind of catastrophe in space and time. It absolutely had to be returned back to its own time. It had to be shut off and returned back to its own time. And so that was the purpose of why the Montauk facility was originally created and built. All right. But now that they had these toys, it's not like they're just going to put these toys away and not play in the play box, right? And that's why we've got Preston Nichols and Duncan Cameron explaining the stuff that went on at Montauk. Now, I'm not going to belay this too much further. It's already a lot of information, and I don't want to. I often get accused of bombarding people with too much information at once. I apologize, but it's hard to get all this stuff out, and to get it out in a concise, kind of digestible way, you know. But anyway, so the story goes on from there. They did all kinds of experiments. They used this to open portals to Mars. They use this to open portals to all kinds of places on Earth and on other places in space and time, and in time, like going back in time, forwards in time, and that'll bring me. I'm going to go back to the MK Ultra as soon as I'm done with this, and then I'm going to swing to other things of time travel. Okay, and I'm going to try and be brief because we're already like an hour and 30 in. Anyway, so they the way they describe it, and like I said, I encourage people to go look up this channel, channel 3X, and this title, and go listen to the original story. It would have been too long for me to play it here anyway, but things got kind of weird and crazy, and I forget why things got really bad at the facility. I forget exactly what the reasons were, but things were going bad. All right. And so what happened is Duncan and Preston and some of the others came up with an idea, and they were like, now there's different stories, different sides to the story. If I remember this side of the story correctly from Preston and Duncan, and I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that old thing and find out exactly what their side is, because there are different sides of this. But they claim that some really bad stuff was going on from the leadership of Montauk, and that they were evil people, and they were starting to use these experiments in very evil ways. All right, ways that you can imagine that involved the treatment of kids, and not only that, but technology that they were planning to use on the rest of humanity to manipulate us, which our government's doing now. But anyway, they decided that they weren't working for good people, and they needed to destroy the facility. Well, in the Montauk Project, not only with the power of the chair could they open like a dimension to anything, time and space. I'm sure there were some limitations, but not only could they open up an actual portal to anything you could, any place or time you could basically imagine, but it could even create things that didn't exist, if you will. All right, quote unquote. You know how we talk about, even in the last episode of my show, I think it was, or the one before that, we talked about the Slender Man. Remember the stories of the Slender Man or the Rake? All right. These were stuff that were just made up and creepy pasta. They weren't real. However, it got so much attention from the general public and people that people started to have real sightings and real encounters with the Slender Man, and with what was the other one? With Slender Man and the Rake, all right, which is like the white cryptid, it looks really strange. Looks like a hairless human being with a strange face and mouth and all. Very creepy. People have footage of these things now, all right, of both, all right, and that was only created in creepypasta, but it became so much in the imagination of people that in some way we almost brought it into existence. We almost brought it into existence. Well, they were saying that the Montauk chair didn't just have the ability to do time travel or location travel. It could actually literally invent things, make things physical that weren't real if you created them in your mind. That's insane. Okay. Um, I I was in a religious order where I was studying to be a monk in New York years ago, with Father Benedict Rochelle. He was a PhD psychologist. Had a lot of huge respect in the city of New York. He was also an exorcist for the Diocese of New York, and he told me and my brothers when I was in his community about a story where he was called to a little girl that had a poltergeist in a room. Like the movie Poltergeist? Like okay, you remember in the movie Poltergeist when they open the door and everything's like flying around the room in circles and coming at you? Well, that happened in real life with Father Gershel and this little girl. The family called, they said, "We got a poltergeist in our house." That movie had been out, and they're like, "Okay, this is it. We got it." They bring him there. He opens the door and he says, sure enough, things are flying around. He said a tube of toothpaste almost hit him in the face. Now, normally that might not be a big deal, but if you remember long ago, toothpaste were made out of metal. Before we had plastic, they were made out of metal tubes. And he said one of these things almost hit him in the face and everything was flying in circles in the room. Well, he said he did his investigation and spoke with the little girl. And at the end of it, the parents were like, so we got a poltergeist, right? They're like, we've seen the movie. This has got to be a poltergeist or, something to that effect is around that time. He says, no, you don't have a poltergeist. And they said, well, the house is haunted. And they're like, he says, no, the house is not haunted. And they said, well, Father, how can all this happen in her room if it's not a poltergeist and not a haunting or something like that? And he said, it's the little girl. The little girl had the ability to be telekinetic, and she was moving everything in her room. And I don't even know if she was doing it by will or if this was something she created in her mind, okay? That she might not have had control of, or like a willful control of. He also talked about how there were punch holes in the walls. Like if you get in an argument, a fight, and you punch a hole in a wall through like the sheetrock, right? The problem is the holes were punched from inside the wall out, not from outside in the wall, but from inside the wall out, which would be like impossible. The little girl was doing that. And the little girl had the ability to even manifest ghosts and shadow people kind of stuff. And the funny thing is, his solution for getting everything to stop was he sat the little girl down with her family and he was like, yep, you got a ghost, you got a haunting. He's like, it's a shame, but you can't have Christmas here anymore. The little girl was like, wait, back that up. What? No more Santa Claus? No more presents? What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, well, Santa can't come and deliver his gifts if this kind of stuff's going on in the house. It won't happen. So all of a sudden, everything stopped. Everything stopped. And he said that was not the only case that he worked on like that. There was another case that happened and also was with a young girl, like in the movie Poltergeist. And there seems to be something about young girls right before hitting puberty that have very strong kind of psychic kind of abilities. All right. Anyway, so my point is, if a little kid could do that, then imagine what this technology with the Montauk chair could actually produce through sheer will. And not to say that it's not a real creature out there that you think up in your mind and it just brings you to that in the chair. You might have thought you just invented it or created it, but no, there's actually something out there that fits that description, and the chair just brought you to it. Anyway, long story. They decided that what was going on and what the higher ups were doing at Montauk was wrong, and they had bad intentions for the rest of us. And that's the truth. See, these are globalists, and these globalists were trying to use MK Ultra and learn how to manipulate and control us so that we are all slaves to their system. So these guys decided they wanted to try and put a stop to that. So they had Duncan use the chair, and with the ability of the chair, they said that he summoned up a very crazy type of monster or creature at will. All right. Kind of like what you got here that was depicted in Stranger Things, even though that's fiction. They said that Duncan was able to sum up a creature that came through, and the creature was terrifying and was horrific and was scary. And all the staff in the facility started to flip out. Well, did you ever see the movie War of the Worlds with Keanu Reeves, the remake? Do you remember where they're trying to work on the alien technology in the lab and it starts breaking through the containment area? What do? They hit that button and it does a flash of the whole lab. That means it locked the doors, and everyone in there was burnt up to a crisp. Burned the whole thing. That's a flash. All right. That's used a lot of times in high level military experiments and others where you're dealing with stuff that's very dangerous. So if something breaks contamination in the experiment, you can flash and kill everything in there. Well, something like that similarly took place in Montauk. When Duncan summoned this creature that came in there and started doing his horrific thing, wasn't happy to be there. The higher ups all became extremely scared and they enacted their safety call protocols, which was they evacuated everybody and they sealed in the whole place with concrete. They probably set off a bomb to destroy the equipment. See, unlike in Afghanistan, we don't leave our material left for Taliban to take. That's not in the standard operating procedure. We destroy it. And if we weren't able to destroy it, we carpet bomb the next day and make sure the place and all our equipment is leveled so that they don't just get handed the keys saying, here you go. Yeah, you want to take our stuff for a ride now that we're going to be snowflakes and leave? And we're just going to leave all our billions of stuff and basically create, give our enemy a army overnight of our equipment. Yeah, like that was an accident, right? An accident? No. That's complete BS. It's not an accident. That was all by design. Anyway, and that's because our government is evil. Um, Getting back to the story, so they the staff evacuated. They did containment protocols. They probably set the whole place on fire. Probably blew it up, and then they sealed the whole thing in concrete. After all that was done, they sealed it all in concrete. And this is the story, I believe, if I'm telling it right, from Preston Nichols and Duncan Cameron. This is their story. And that's how these two men claim that they destroyed the the Montauk Project to stop the evil that our government was planning to do. So they were not only were they working on the mind control, but you see the antenna array. They were working on how can they use frequencies and these antennas to control the American population. Okay, to make them behave in a manner that they wanted to manipulate us to behave in. Okay, so that's the Montauk story. All right, now the second side to that, and I've alluded to a little bit again, is like the experimentation on the kids, and that's where they brought in this is MK Ultra. Okay, now just a brief. Hopefully, a lot of you understand what MK Ultra is. You probably heard it many times. You probably heard me talking about it, but I'll do a very brief recap for anyone who might be new. MK Ultra came out of World War II. It came out of World War II, and what happened is after the alliance forces with America and Britain and others defeated Hitler and the Nazis in World War II. Now, you remember that we had the Nuremberg trials, and this information came out in public record of the Nuremberg trials. The Nuremberg trials were the show trials. It was just, hey, we're all angry at Nazis, so we're gonna hang you all. We're gonna hoist a trial and just take out all of our anger and aggression on you. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. These people were horrible and did some horrible, evil things like in on all kinds of levels, not just the war, but what they did in the prison camps, Auschwitz. I had family, and look, Jews always want to tell you, they always want to cry on Auschwitz and the concentration camps. I get it. I'm with you. That was horrific. I don't wish that on anybody. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. And I believe what was done to the Jews was immoral, wrong, and evil. Oh, and they also used a bunch of them for experimentation. But it's not just a Jewish thing either. I had family that died in those concentration camps. You know why? They weren't there because they were Jewish. They were there because they were Catholics. They were put in concentration camps because they were Catholics. It wasn't just them. Now, what happened to them was horrific, but what happened to everybody was horrific. And now I also have a grandfather that liberated some of those camps. Hoorah. And I even have photographs. I don't know where I have them anymore. We gave most of them to museums. But my grandfather, with his own camera, took several pictures, and somewhere around here, I've got some of them. And they're horrific of what they found uh, when they saved some of these people in these concentration camps. My grandfather literally said the world has to know what happened here, and that's why he took all the pictures he took. And like I said, our families donated most of those. I got a few of them, and they weren't pleasant to look at. I don't even know where I have them anymore, and I got so much junk I wouldn't even know where to look. But but it was horrific. I mean, those images are burned in my brain. But I met a woman when I worked in Hollywood. I worked for Beverly Dean in Hollywood. She was the manager of Jim Caviezel. He played Jesus in the Passion. He played in Sound of Freedom last summer. I encourage everyone to go see that movie. It's a fantastic movie about a true life story. But anyway, and he's a great actor. But I worked for Beverly Dean, and Beverly Dean rented a office from a Jewish woman, and this Jewish woman grew up in the concentration camps when she was a child. And when I got to meet her one day when I was working with Beverly Dean, she came for the rent, which Beverly often didn't have. But and the woman was very gracious and nice and sweet to her, and really was a sweet lady. I met her and I asked her if she would show me the tattoo. She pulled up her sleeve, and on her arm was a purple set of numbers, and it was the numbers that was placed tattooed on her arm when she was in the concentration camp when she was a child, just because she was Jewish, you know, and that's horrific. Thank God she was able to get away and have a better life for herself, and was a very sweet woman. I really liked her. She was very nice. I didn't get a chance to talk to her a long time, but I was grateful that she showed me the tattoo. I asked to see it, and she pulled up her sleeve and showed it to me. I'm grateful for that. Um, because the world can't forget. And the thing is, if those things could happen with governments in the past, they've built 800 concentration camps across the United States, and it's for us. And if you listen in the news, they're saying, "Oh, conservatives need to be put in concentration camps, re-education centers. We need to get rid of all these people." Really? So you're wanting to commit that atrocities all over again? And these aren't going to be like nice places or places you ever leave from if you get sent to one. All right. Anyway, back to the story. So they were doing experiments on kids. And in World War II, you had the hangman's trial where the show trials basically where we were just taking out our aggression on the Nazi scientists who got what they deserve as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not trying to offer pity for them. I'm just saying it was kind of a show trial. It didn't matter what they said or did. They wanted people to hang because people were angry. And I get it. I understand. Um, but what a lot of people don't understand and isn't really just is the US government hired over 2,000, it might have even been 4,000 of those Nazi scientists that were doing evil experiments for Hitler to come to the US of A, and do those same experiments right here for Uncle Sam. The same evil experiments, including the torture and abuse of little children. Fact. Absolute fact. And that brings us to MK Ultra. Now, the program was called Operation Paperclip. And again, that came out on record in the Nuremberg trials. And that was the US government hired thousands of Nazi scientists to come to the United States and do operations for us. Now, there were two main areas that they wanted to concentrate in. But those two main areas, just like Montauk, split off into hundreds of thousands of different programs and studies. All right, literally. The first thing that they were interested in was propulsion design. All right, how propulsion. The greatest propulsion designers and engineers in the world at that time were the Nazis. And the head of that, who headed up JPL, which was the forerunner of NASA, Jet Propulsion's laboratory, some call Jack Parsons' laboratory, and that's for another show, how Satanism created NASA. Anyway, um, But that said, um, so Jet Propulsion Laboratory, it was headed up by Werner von Braun, and we mentioned him before. He was a Nazi scientist that created the H-2 rockets that were the interballistic missile rockets, intercontinental rockets at the time, first ever created by him, at least to that level. And he was famous for that. He helped create our space program, and he was instrumental in that. In fact, um, I think HBO just did a series on that recently where they did the history of that. Now, of course, it was a docudrama TV show, so it started off like pretty historical in a lot of ways, but then it went from historical to, oh, now it's just DEI and woke and you know and put a chick in her and make her gay thing. It just went off the rails. Went from actual fact in history to now we're just changing history, make it whatever the hell we want. It's whatever. But anyway, but still, especially the good part of that series is pretty good, and they showed Werner von Braun in those episodes, at least a depiction of him. I've got pictures of him walking with Kennedy, JF Kennedy back in the day, and stuff like that. By the way, he warned on his deathbed of a fake alien invasion to create the one world government, the Great Reset. I'll have to pick up the book again. It's heavy. So, but I'm trying to bring a lot of information here together. But that was part of Operation Paperclip. So the first thing they were interested in with the Nazi scientists was propulsion design. And that can, like I said, can be researched and found through Werner von Braun heading up JPL, that headed up NASA. All right, modern NASA. Number two, they were interested in super soldier programs, and this is where MK Ultra came in. MK Ultra was how can we take the main thing started off with the super soldier program. How do we create super soldiers? Okay, and that's like L in this series of from inspired by the Montauk show or the Montauk Project that inspired the television show Stranger Things, right? Um, L was created to be a psychic, basically super soldier, to do things that we normally don't have the abilities to do. And this is some of the tests that they were working on in the Montauk Project was parts of the super soldier program. And then that became known as MK Ultra, which was its own program. But part of MK Ultra wound out working with the Montauk Project because they had aligned scientific things they were doing on, and they were trying to get kids to work in the chair, and they were trying to see how they could create super soldiers. Right now, one thing that's very interesting, you saw how in the TV series L, to maximize her psychic ability, they would place her in what's called a sensory deprivation tank. All right, now the reason they put you in the sensory deprivation tank is because they want you to learn to reach out with your mind. All right, they want you to learn to do what the chair could amplify but without having the access of the chair. All right, does that make sense? And so in order to do that, you had to practice this talent and skill. First of all, you had to possess it, but then you had to work on strengthening and practice a skill like learning to drive a car, learning to read or fly a plane. And the way you would do that is they have to block off your senses. And the best way they found to block off your senses was to immerse you into a sensory deprivation tank and leave you there for hours. And you would have objectives when you're in there. And you're trying to turn off your normal sensory perception so that you can stretch out with your brain and your spirit, your soul, your consciousness. All right. That's not just bound to this body as we perceive it is, or that we've been taught that it is. It's not. Your brain, your essence has the ability to expand beyond your body. All right. And it also, like I talked about the angels with location, it also works with knowledge. There's a type of internet that's a natural internet that if you want information from, you can target that information through the search engine of your brain, and you focusing on what the information you're trying to receive. And if you learn to tap into that skill, you are able to download that information. It becomes present to you. And that is what sometimes we call psychic ability, which is a very poor way of describing it. That's also what we call um, intuition, which, by the way, in the programs, they don't call it ESP, they don't call it psychic ability, they call it intuition, because that's what it is. It's intuition. We all have this ability. We are not trained in how to use it. And some people have the ability to use it better than others, just like some sports athletes are better than others. Some people are better at math than others. You see what I'm saying? We all have different gifts. Okay. Now, I'll share with you one thing. I talked about this one time um, with somebody. Who was it? I think, was it with L.A. Marzulli, or I don't know, or the space program. I talked about this in one of my previous shows. I don't talk about this much, but I have memories. My hand to God, I've got memories as a child being raised in these programs. 100%. I have memories of being placed in these sensory deprivation tanks for long periods of time. I remember how it felt. I remember my emotions. I remember the texture of the material that I was put in. I remember the color of the water. I remember the temperature of the water. I remember the breathing apparatus. They put you in there in a way where you float, and they put these oxygen things, around your face, kind of like Luke in Empire Strikes Back when they put him in the back of the tank to heal. Very similar to that. The water was heated it was a warm temperature, and when I was a kid, I used to think that these weird people were putting me in tanks full of pee or urine, which wasn't the case. It had no smell, didn't stink. Might have had a type of like almost almost like pool smell, but lighter, or even a saltwater smell. But it didn't have a bad smell like urine would. But I thought that as a child because they're placing me in warm water that was yellow. It had a yellow tint for some reason. And I'm like, they're putting me in pee. But anyway, I have memories of that, and I've got other memories of being in programs like that as a child. And I won't go into too much detail about that kind of stuff, but I will say this. Now, when I reach a certain age, it's all gone. Um, One of the things they do in these programs is they have ways to wipe your memory. And I do have these memories of being, and I was in underground military bases. I was very clear that that's where it was. And there were other experiments that were on this level, but not in the tanks. And I won't go into a whole lot of detail about that. But I will say this, it was all geared towards intuition. I have a super strong intuition, and that's what they are looking for in a lot of those programs. And those programs are not just for Montauk Project. Those programs are for all kinds of levels of deployment, application, and uses on various levels. So um, some of them off world, some of them are for off world programs. But anyway, they look for intuition. Um, by the way, aliens all have the ability to do this. Humans probably are the weakest at this ability, but it's a natural ability we are all born with. We're all born with. We all have. It's not like occult esoteric wisdom and stuff. Now there is occult esoteric wisdom, and you want to stay away from that kind of stuff for real. Palm readers and all that kind of stuff, stay away from all that. But we all do have a type of intuition that I believe we're created with. Think of it this way. In Christianity, we're taught we're not just human in physical form, we're also soul. We're supposed to be a mix of the angelic world and the creative world in something unique, that we have soul and body. So we're not just flesh, we're also soul. The Bible talks about this constantly. Romans 1, Romans 8, be of the flesh, be of the soul. You know what I mean? So, if an angel has the ability, first of all, angels in their pure form are not physical. They're pure spirits. They're pure souls. They're pure energy. They're not physical like we are. They can manipulate nature and take on form, but that's not their natural state. Their natural state is without physicality. So, how do they speak and communicate if they don't have a mouth? They do it through intuition and through telekinesis. It's a natural state. We say in Thomistic tradition in college, we study the theology of angels. Angels have what we refer to as perfect knowledge. That means anytime they want to know something, it's just given to them. Just like if you do an internet search and boom, it's right there. You know, how do I change a tire? How do I change a computer database? I mean, you just look it up and it's the information is given to you. The angelic nature has that ability. Now, some call that the Akashic records. Like, forget who was the guy who said that, talked about that kind of stuff. I'm forgetting all of a sudden. Um, but I'm just saying there is a natural ability of this. And angels, they can't contain all knowledge at once, but when they want to know something, it's presented to them. And there's some kind of system, some kind of spiritual internet where they're able to tap into that. And their mind is able to be the search engine for that. Well, uh, in the military, they've learned about some of this stuff. I still think in somewhat rudimentary levels, although it's impressive what they can do. They have a technique called remote viewing. And I should do a show sometime just on the history of remote viewing, Eastern and Western style remote viewing. Remote viewing is where our government started a basically psychic, for lack of a better word, spy program where remote viewers are trained through skills that just about anyone can learn. Some will be better than others innately, but anyone can learn these skills. And it's about learning how to view information from that matrix, if you will, where you can know information that we're looking for information on, and it works. It's real. Remote viewing, when done correctly, is very real, very very real. All right. Now there's tricks and protocols to it to make sure that the information is more accurate and non-corrupt. The problem in remote viewing is your active imagination consciousness. It's so used to being in the driver's seat that it wants to take over all the time. You have to learn discipline of how to take your active consciousness and imagination and put it in the back seat so that your subconscious can get in the driver's seat and navigate. All right. If you can perform to learn to perform that skill, you can remote view and you can learn to get knowledge. The problem is, again, you constantly, and it's part skill, but you in practice, but you constantly have to learn to remove your conscious imagination from taking over because it will corrupt the data. If it was pure subconscious feed, you can get very accurate data for just about anything. All right. Anyway, I won't go into too much of that, but this would be kind of one of the things that could be a shoot off of Project Paperclip, MK Ultra, possibly Montauk, and the super soldier programs to psychic spies. All right. Now, some of these so-called psychic spies were trained just to be able to mentally be spies and say, "Hey, where is this officer in this world, and what's he saying in this conversation, and what does he carry in his briefcase? Where are the missiles hidden?" You know that they could do that with a psychic spy just sitting in a room with a glass of water, a pencil, and a piece of paper. All right, and that's real, and that works. Uh, I'll challenge anybody on that point. But they try to train in telekinesis to where you could also do physical movements and stuff like that with your mind and your brain. Um, and that was also part of the super soldier program and where they experimented on these kids. Oh, going back to my story real quick. So I said I have memories of being in these programs, and then as I get older, it all comes to a stop. And like I said, they have techniques for wiping minds and making you forget this information kind of stuff. But that said, I came across some people later that I that contacted me or I got in touch with that gave me more information about these programs and my possible connections to some of them, including names and stuff like that. I was talking to this one guy one day, and he was like, "Look," he gave me a list of stuff, and he's like, "You were in this operation, you had this security clearance. Here's the name of the operation. This is what you did." And I'm like, "All right, this dude is blowing smoke." This guy, I thought he was full of crap. I thought everything he was saying was he was just telling me something he thought I wanted to hear. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I had a past life and I was a king. Damn it, I was a king." I mean, everyone wants to be some superhero. Very few people is like, "Yeah, I had a past life and I was a slave." Which, by the way, there's one guy named Robert Rodriguez, I believe is his name, who claims he was in the secret space program. But the reason I believe his story is he wasn't a super soldier. He wasn't like some crazy pilot or something badass. He's like, I was in the secret space program. I got abducted and I was a slave. Now, who says that? Nobody. That's why I think that dude's telling the truth. And his story, by the way, one of the best I've ever heard. And I should do a show on that. I've tried to reach out to him a few times. He's not in the public circuits anymore, so I don't think he does interviews and stuff anymore. He did at one time. I tried to reach out to him then, and I couldn't get a hold of him. But his story is phenomenal, and I might cover that in a future episode because it's an amazing story. It's just really look up Robert. I think I'm saying his name right. It's been a while. Robert Rodriguez. Am I just saying the director, Robert Rodriguez? Uh, um, it might be Martin Rodriguez. I don't think Rodriguez is his last name, but I'll have to get back to you on that, or y'all can correct me. I'm sure people know in the chat or something. In the chat, y'all know who I'm talking about? The guy's last name is Rodriguez, who he was in the secret space program and he claims he was a slave in the program and tells like a fantastic story. Tony Rodriguez, thank you so much. I knew somebody in my chat would have the right answer. It's hard keeping all this stuff straight in my head, covering so much material, especially from so many years ago. And I'm basically doing it off the top of my head. So, but yeah, thank you. Now Tony Rodriguez, thank you. I appreciate that. Right. Thank you. So Tony Rodriguez, y'all can go look him up. Since I can't get him as a guest on my show, more than likely. But he does have a fantastic story, and I encourage people to go look up his original story. Um, he did. I think he's told a story on Gaia and stuff, but he's been on lots of shows, and I've heard him from multiple sources. But he's really fantastic and just a great humble guy. And you know what else about him and his story? He's like, man, not only was I abducted and made to be a slave, he's like, but you know what? He said it made me a better person. He said it made me a better person. It made me a more humble person and more grateful for the things I have in my life and things that we take for granted. He said being a slave made me a better person. Man, wow. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. Now, I'm not saying slavery's right. I'm just saying for this man to say through his personal growth that he's almost grateful for the stuff he experienced even as a slave and that it made him a better person. That blows me away. I mean, this is a humble guy, you know, and I think a good guy. And that story I believe is absolutely real. But anyway, um so back to my story. This guy, like I said, I thought he was full of crap because he's telling me, highfalutin stuff, and I'm just like, that's not impressing me. It just made me think that the guy was just blowing smoke up my butt, and he's trying to tell me stuff he thought I wanted to hear, but I did. That stuff was turning me away. Um, but I don't need to think that did anything impressive to be stable and comfortable in who I am as a person. You know what I mean? That I don't like hearing that that the stuff he was saying that that he claimed that I was a part of. And I don't know that there's really any truth to it, but something crazy happened. This guy told me he uh he told me I was, according to the information in the file that he had access to through a computer system that he had access to. He said I had sharp pain in two areas of my body that I was struggling with. And sure a doggone enough, I was really struggling with sharp pain in two specific pinpoints on my body, and they were really irritating me for a long time. And I never mentioned this to a single person. I don't like going to doctors. I don't like doctors. I don't trust doctors. That's not to say there's not very good doctors. I have friends that are very good doctors, but I do not believe in putting my health in the hands of other people outside of extreme circumstances. You know, if I get in a car accident, okay, send me to an ER. Outside of that, my health belongs to me, not some dude with a lab coat thinks he's God. All right. And I don't believe in taking medications to be healthy of any kind. I think the way to be healthy is to stay away from that trash, you know, as much as possible. Not all medications have side effects, and they're not oftentimes good for you, you know. Um, so I try to, for my own personal health, I try to stay away from that stuff. And I think I'm healthier because of it. I don't think we were born to have this stuff to survive or to do anything or to behave properly. I mean, it's crazy now. There are extreme circumstances. I will absolutely admit that there is medication sometimes that very much helps people and they can't function without it. If that helps them to function normally, that's fine. I'm all for that. Um, but I've also seen abuses of that. And I've known people that had their lives destroyed um, through stuff like that. So I'm very cautious of that, and I don't think that God created us that we have to be dependent on things in order to be healthy or survive or to function right. Now, like I said, there are extreme cases, and that's a different thing. It's not what I'm referring to. I'm just saying the majority of people, you know. But anyway, so getting back to my story, this guy was telling me I had this pain in these two spots, and he was like, "Look, it's on my file. It's in the computer." And he's like, "If you want, I can turn it off. I can put in a program and turn off that pain." And man, I'm like, this dude's full of crap, man. I don't know how he knew those two spots that I've never told anybody. But I'm like, this dude's full of, he's just making crap up, you know? Like I said, I thought he was just pumping smoke, telling me what he thought I wanted to hear. But I was like, I was like, sure, if you can turn it off, man, turn it off. He's like, man, starting tomorrow, you'll never feel that pain again. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, I'm like, yeah. All right, nice talking to you. See you later. OMG. The next day, that pain was gone and it has never come back in both those spots. Now, you could say power of suggestion of the mind, except I didn't believe him. I truly thought he was full of crap. I truly did not believe he was accurate at all. I really didn't. And when that pain stopped and has not come back since, I was like, whoa. Then I was like, maybe the dude was on to something when he was telling me about this stuff I was involved in through these programs. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, maybe they're, I mean, I don't know. I don't have enough data to know, but I do know I absolutely have these memories, and they're very detailed, and it's multiple times, and I know a lot of information from them. I was like, is it possible there could be some legitimacy to this? I really don't know. But I have also encountered other people since then that have also brought up not the exact same thing he did, but said that they had information I was connected to programs like that. And I did grow up on military bases from a military family. So, um, and even my family doesn't know some of the work that some of my family worked on through Department of Defense projects. It's not public knowledge. Um, so who knows? I know these things do happen to people. I know I did have some memories. I don't know to what extent that goes. I would like to know, but at the same time, I'm not trying to go out of my way too hard to look for that. I don't know if there is a way to verify that. If there was, I would certainly like to know. But that's something that did put me down the rabbit hole of like the secret space program stuff and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm just trying to describe some of the things that goes on with these kids and these labs and what they're looking for. So that's the MK Ultra program and how it tied into Montauk. So we covered a lot so far. We're 2 hours, 19 minutes in. We covered the USS Eldridge and the Philadelphia experiment and how that led to the Montauk Project and how the Montauk Project was a joint operation with alien help, supposedly, according to Preston Nichols and Duncan Cameron, um, that in their stories, that claim that it was a joint operation with aliens to create to use repurpose crashed UFO technology to use this chair to find a way to open portals through time and space through the help of psychic kids, if you will, for lack of a better word, and especially Duncan Cameron, who was very good at had one of the best at using had the ability to use the chair. So we've covered all that. I tied in MK Ultra, how it connected to that, what they did with the experiment. Like I said, all kinds of experiments extended from this, and it was all about super soldiers and how to control the human brain, how to hack the human brain. So you can doggone be sure that Montauk was certainly a part of that, because the reason they were using the satellite style system, this antenna array, was how could they project this on a populace to control them? And I guarantee you, these were the infantile stages of that advanced technology. Imagine what they have the ability to do today, especially with things like HARP or CERN, the CERN Hadron Collider, which I think is very evil. I'll do a show on that sometime. But anyway, just imagine those things. Also, a couple other things before I swing into the last thing before I go, and that is this. This is a news story that came on Fox News. I remember when this story broke, and it was about a very, very strange looking hairless creature found washed up off the shore from Montauk, Long Island. People are like, what in the world is this creature? This thing almost seems to have a beak for a face. First of all, it's completely hairless. All right, looks like some type of mammal that's completely hairless, and it has a beak, kind of strange, very odd looking face to it. Not, in fact, police were called in this news report because of a body that washed up on shore because it's quite large. But when they came upon it, they realized that it was very strange and not natural looking, and they called it the monster of Montauk because that's where it washed up from. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I would throw in there also. Um, Plum Island, also known from this place, is where we get Lyme's disease and ticks that form Lyme's disease. Turns out that was man-made. It was they were working on an experiment to weaponize syphilis. All right, syphilis. They were trying to weaponize syphilis, and they created these ticks that carried this disease, Lyme, what's become known as Lyme's disease, and it got out of the lab and into the public. And so now you've got people across the country that are affected and suffering from Lyme's disease. And in some ways, that can be a fatal disease it's a migrating virus. It's very hard to get rid of, and if it gets into your brain, you're done. Anyway, so uh, like I said, Montauk was closed up, and they had military guards there posted for a long time, even though the whole facility's shut down. And like I said, most of the underground stuff was even concreted in, according to Preston Nichols, I believe. I wanted to throw this in there. They never ended the Montauk Project. Bum, 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 bum. And I can tell you, if the government finds a new toy that can manipulate or help them in their goals, yeah, it's not going away. Just like they made remote viewing go away. No, they didn't. They just put it underground. Made it secret when I say underground, not physically underground, although they do that too. Um, So, okay, quickly, I don't want to take too much more time, but I still have some more stuff to cover here. One is this. This is one of my favorite books, Project Serpo. By the way, recently in our local theater, sometimes plays like old retro movies, and recently they just played Close Encounters of the Third Kind. All right, and I drugged my best friend to go see it. He's like, "Man, I don't want to watch this old cheese," and I'm like, "Shut up, it's good cheese." And and so we went to watch it, and he was like, "Man, it was really good. I liked it." I'm like, "Yeah, it was ahead of its time." Close Encounters of the Third Kind, for those that don't know, was loosely, you always have to say that when it comes to movies, based on a true story. That is not a joke. Okay. No, I do not want to do an update. Go away. Um, it's loosely based on a true story. Now, the whole story of that movie is kind of it's all made up, but then at the end, where we had the big encounter meeting with the humans and the government and the meeting the aircraft and the space aliens, that was 100% real. The exchange program that we did, that was 100% real. Spielberg must have had been given inside knowledge on that. Okay, that was a real event, and here's how it went down. I'll explain how it went down. Man, I should have broken this up into two shows because I don't want to go on a whole long time. I don't want it to be 3 hours. Anyway, so Close Encounters of the Third Kind. All right, what happened is this was Roswell. Everyone knows about the Roswell crash. Okay, and I should do a I should do a show on that. You know what? I'm gonna say I'll touch on it briefly, but I'll save that and do a show on that because it's worth spending more time on, and I want to do it justice. But I'll give you just a brief overview right now, and I'll do a whole show on it later. The Roswell crash. We recovered an alien from that, and I'll go into more detail later. But we were able to recover some communication equipment, and we told the alien to call home and ask for help and ask for his people to come out and get him like an ET. All right, phone home, get help. Um, so that's what happened. We made contact. This alien made contact with his people, and they said they would send a craft to get him. They said it would take 2 years with their current technology for the craft to get all the way back here to Earth. So we're like, okay, cool. Well, the our alien died. Eben, EBE1, extra biological entity one, Eben, died from injuries due to the crash. We just didn't understand his. We tried everything we could to help him. Everything. We had the top people working on it. We just didn't understand their anatomy and how to help them or fix them. It was very different than ours. And even just trying to communicate with this thing was extremely difficult. But he died, but about a year into the 2 year trip back for the ship. But we, by that time, learned how to operate the communication equipment, and we learned a very rudimentary form of their language to where you would sound, you know, like somebody who didn't know your language, but you could piece enough words together to almost understand what they're trying to say. You know what I'm saying? Uh, so we were able to do that, and we contacted the home planet or whatever this thing, and we told them that sadly Eben one died due to his injuries from the previous crash. We tried to do what we could, and we were unsuccessful. But since you've already spent a year getting here, there's no point turning around for nothing. They came up with the idea, why don't we do an exchange program? But since the ship was already on the way, they only left one alien behind. All right. But we sent a team of like 10 to 12 people. Now, what's funny about that is, man, some alien on that ship drew the short straw and had to stay behind. He's like, man, this sucks. But anyway, um, so they plan to meet in New Mexico or Arizona or Utah, somewhere in that area, because that area was very similar to the aliens' home planet. Was that type of environment, that kind of arid desert. so they felt comfortable meeting there. But we made a point to meet with them when they arrived. We had trained up people within a year, and that was done through the farm. For those that know what I'm talking about, that's intelligence training for a specific agency in Virginia. But anyway, we trained a group of basically military and civilian scientists to be basically astronauts, and it's different sources give different accounts. Um, but it was 10 to 12 people. I believe it was about 10 people. Two of them were, I think, at least two of them were women. The rest were men. It might have been three women, but it was mostly men. You had some security personnel. You had scientists that were specialists in different fields that would have been necessary. They gave them all kinds of equipment. And that exchange program you see at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, go watch it again. Great movie. Um, that's a true story that happened. And that it all happened because of the Roswell crash. And that is what this is about. That project was called Project Serpo. Project Serpo. The name of the planet that these aliens lived on, it was called, we call it Serpo. I don't know if it's its name or what they call it, but we call it Serpo. And um, there used to be a lot of information. I have this book, by the way. I couldn't find it. I tried to find it before the show, and I could not find it. But my place is a mess. I just got crap everywhere. But I'm a bachelor. I don't have a wife. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm a bachelor, so um, I'm not great at picking up all the time. I'm not. I'm not like dirty. I don't have trash sitting out, but I do have clutter and a lot of junk, and um, I don't have anyone to help me clean or even motivate me to clean. So stuff just tends to pile up. But my parents were the same way, and I used to make fun of them for it, and now I feel bad because I'm just like them. you know. But anyway, yeah. So Project Serpo, it needs to be this. I need to do a whole show on this because there's just too much information to cover to do it real justice. And something else I need to mention: there's a big disinformation campaign against Project Serpo. However, now see, most people would say, "Oh, well, see, it was proven that it's not wrong. Oh, it got fact checked and it's false." No, you got to learn about intelligence. Just because something is debunked does not mean that that's legitimate. The government oftentimes debunks stuff that's real, and they will go through great lengths and spend lots of money to debunk stuff, um, just so the general public will believe it's not real when it is, when they're trying to steer them away from information. I've come across at least two, if not three, sources that back up this story. Um, and I think in very legitimate ways that makes me believe this 100% took place. I absolutely believe in my intuition, which is super strong. Um, After being in all those, L tanks like L was in Stranger Things, yeah, I grew up in those tanks. Um, but I absolutely believe that this actually took place. There's no question in my mind. Now, I can be wrong. I'm not perfect and not the end all be all of knowledge, but I do absolutely believe that this took place. Now, something that's interesting about this book beyond Project Serpo, and this is why I'm bringing this book up at this time in our show on time travel, and that is in this book, it covers some other information, not just the trip. And one of the things it covers, first of all, is Dogman. They said in Project on the planet Serpo, they had a genetics laboratory, and we were allowed in the laboratory one time, only once. And I won't tell you why, because it's kind of sad. But anyway, we were allowed to investigate it and take a look at it one time. And they found that they would do lots of genetic experiments of mixing different species together to create weird things. And one of the things that they recorded in their journals was that in the last two pods that were like stasis pods, like suspended animation, like you see in the movies, you know, um, they had two humanoid creatures that had full canine heads on them, like Dogman. 2. And they said they were like scary, scary looking, and they were big. All right. 2 of them in stasis pods. All right. Experiments, lab rats. All right. So that was, and that's recorded. I believe that's in this book. I'm not a, I'm almost positive. It's been a long time since I read it, but I believe it's in that book. I know it's in the story for sure, but I believe it's in the book. So that's one reason I wanted to point out that book, and I have pointed out before. But another reason is in this book they talk about some of the history of time travel, and that leads us into our next guy. That's a teaser. Um, one of this book describes that one of the earliest form of time travel that our government discovered was invented by a Roman Catholic priest. All right, a Roman Catholic priest. This is not a priest. Um, it's a short version of a rosary. But anyway, they said that there was this priest that was a genius, absolute genius when it came to mathematics and when it came to music. That he was an extremely gifted composer, and that makes a lot of sense because math and music are 2 sides of the same coin, really. So it surprises me none that one would be highly gifted in both. They go together. But this guy composed a lot of the music and masses, even for the Vatican, like that high level, or like highest level. This guy claimed that through, remember our talk on electromagnetic frequency? This guy claimed he created a device, and this is before the first television, no joke. A device that they said looks like a TV, so much so that they nicknamed it a picture graph because you could see pictures in it. You know how like all right, you guys know I'm into like radios, right? And stuff like that. I love radios. I got some sitting below me, but I'm not going to try and dig them out of boxes and stuff. But anyway, this guy claims that he created a device by accident. That he was like, I have an idea. Let me play with this, and bam, here he goes. He created a device that looks like an old time television set. People said, but he figured just like how you turn a radio dial, you're changing the frequency, and by changing the frequency, you're able to pick up different stations, right? Different electromagnetic waves and stations, and you can hear music and different types of music from turning that dial. This priest claimed he found a way to turn frequency that would change, instead of audio, would give you visual pictures. But it was visual pictures of things through history. And like I've heard rumor that some military like generals and stuff had modern versions of this stuff, and they claim that they watched stuff like the crucifixion of Jesus, like on a television, like the actual one that took place, because that was the kind of stuff you could do with this technology. And they, some of them claim that they I've heard multiple ones claim that they saw this using this technology or a form of it. Now, that was the first form of actual time travel that was invented by this Catholic priest. Now, this next person I'm about to talk about, he talks about this as well, and he was the first source I ever heard talk about it. This book was a different source I heard later that was talking about the same thing, about this Catholic priest and the picture graph. All right, but there was another man who talked about that I listened to years ago, and that's this man, Andrew Bashago. Andrew Bashago is a lawyer, so he's not just some stupid. Well, he's not just some average person. I'm not gonna say the average person's stupid, but he's my intention is he's an above average person and is a successful lawyer. Okay, but he claims that as a child he was involved in a government secret program. Never heard that one before. Called Project Pegasus. And in Project Pegasus, he said it was a time travel program. And he gives elaborate detail. He says that his dad worked in the program, and that's how he got involved as a kid, through his dad. And by the way, You hear that story a lot in these kind of programs with your dad, your grandfather. That was another big one. Um, Especially if your grandfather ever worked for George Bush Sr. That's a number one connection. And my granddad worked with George Bush Sr. He was on his staff, by the way, at one time. Anyway, um, so um, Andrew Bishago gives a huge like history of the U.S. development of time travel programs. Now, according to him, and he has a very interesting story. You can go look him up. But according to him, the U.S. government at his time when he was involved as a kid. Now that's a long time ago when he was a kid, probably the 80s or something like that. He said we had 6 different forms of time travel, and all 6 of them worked on uh, different elements of physics. They all worked differently on different elements of physics, but all could achieve the same end of time travel. However, he said some of them worked better for some desired results than others. For whatever reason, I don't know. The physics just lend itself that way, he claims. One of them, and the first one ever, he claimed, was a Roman Catholic priest who invented the first form of human time control on a thing called the picture graph. Now, he also goes on to say that the picture graph in its elemental base form, when they started using it, looked like a very old television set. All right. But taking the same exact science, physics, whatever technology, and modernizing it a little bit and feeding it tons of power, they said they could not only just take that picture that they could see on the television screen, but now they could open a portal using the same device that you can walk through. Just like we heard about in the Montauk Project. Very similar, different, completely different device. That was based on the repurposed recovery of a crashed alien chair known as the Montauk chair. So completely different technology, not human created. But this was human invented in the first form. Now, of the 6, the first one again was the Catholic priest of the pictograph, and they've just juiced it up and modernized it, and now it's full out time travel. Um, and the others, though, he said some of them are ones that humans invented, and some are ones that aliens gave us. Now, I'm sure one of those would have been the Montauk chair. I haven't listened to Andrew Bishago in a long time, but I'm almost positive one of those 6 would have been the Montauk chair. One was the Catholic priest in the pictograph. Of the other remainder ones, some were also alien gifts and some were human made. I know at least of another one that was an alien gift. They had the thing called the Yellow Book. And the Yellow Book, they said that when it was a gift from aliens, and that's a whole nother issue. But when you turned it on its side, it formed an ability to create a basically vortex, wormhole, or whatever that could manipulate time, a time dilation, where it could be like a time machine. So there's other stories of that, like with J Rod. If you want to hear the stories, look up J Rod. J Rod claims to be aliens that are from that are humans from the future that have their DNA's become so corrupted they look like decrepit little aliens. But they claim that they're us from now, just in the future, that came back here now because they're trying to fix their DNA because they screwed it all up, just like our government's doing right now. Oh, and by the way, the aliens warn of a great catastrophe like a nuclear world war that screws up the planet and human DNA forever. So put that in your peace pipe and smoke it. That's where we're headed with our evil government that we shouldn't trust. Anyway, so getting back to Andrew Bishago and his story, um, where was he? Andrew Bishago. Now, one thing, he gives a lot of information. Now, by the way, he name drops, and guess who he claims was one of the kids that was in the time travel experiments as a boy alongside him. All right, Barry Soetoro, which is known today as Barack Obama, and they were told I believe he said they were told they were going to be like presidents when they were little kids. Oh yeah, your vote matters. Your vote does matter, but uh, they go to great lengths to steal votes. Uh, um, but we can try to beat that by having such landslides that they can't cheat that much, and that's really our only hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi, voting is our only hope. Sorry, some of the nerd had to come out of me. And oh yeah, I did want to tell people, if there's any question, I am a nerd. I have a whole collection in here of graded comic books. So, and by the way, one of my favorites, since I had to digress into that, Buckaroo Banzai in the, what was it, the 24th dimension or something like that? Buckaroo Banzai, great movie. Talk about 80s cheese at its best. Oh, another cool one, Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner. All right. Anyway, um, so Andrew Bashago name drops Barry Soetoro, and he tells a lot of stuff about him. So that's interesting. Another thing he says that in his time travel, he absolutely claims, and I don't know the validity of this, but it sure makes an interesting story. He claims that he is in a photograph where he was sent on a mission to go talk to Abraham Lincoln, and he claims that at this picture that Abraham Lincoln is connected to or in with other pictures. He says he claims he is this boy that was sent back on a mission to deliver a message directly to Abraham Lincoln. So I'll tell you this. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I can tell you this. If our government has the ability to do time travel, I can bet you 1 billion%. Yes, that's a number. Okay, a quadrillion, whatever the hell that means. That our government and other governments are using it to manipulate our past and our future. I promise you that's going to happen. That is absolutely going to happen. So, and let me give you an example of that. I claim this is proof of that. All right. So think of this. You're looking at a pond, right? And it's perfectly still, but you throw a pebble in the pond, and what happens? You get ripples. That's the ripple effect. Now, if I come up to the pond and I see the ripples and something has disturbed the water, then I know somebody threw something in the pond because I'm witnessing the ripple effect. I'm not seeing the event, but I'm seeing its effect, which is the ripple effect, which is called a secondary causality in philosophy. The first causality is the first mover, all right, the cue ball, if you will. And the secondary causality are all the other cue balls hitting each other, or the ripples in the pond, the ripple effect. All right. This is also known as this, well, this not known as, but expands to what we call the concept of the butterfly effect. If you remember the butterfly effect, that's like you go back and change one little thing in time, you come back and a whole lot of other things have changed as a result of that, you know? Um, so that could be an example. So the point of me saying all that is I don't have to see the time travel to see the ripples. And I claim we can all witness the ripples if you pay attention. That is what we call the Mandela effect. Have you heard about the Mandela effect? If you have not, go look it up. Look up the Mandela effect. All right. We've talked about this before on my channel. But the Mandela effect, okay, it's where history and our memories don't equal each other, don't add up. They miss each other. Um, Things have changed in time, space, and time, different to our memories. All right. Now, remember, your memory, your mind is not bound by space and time. So you can retain memories even though time itself has changed. And here's another example that if you alter something in time, you don't it can create almost a new timeline or a merging of timelines that kind of force correct in a sense. All right. You can't you can't change major events because major events, say you saved Kennedy's life. Well, he would die like a week later or something else. Of course, there's proof it course corrects. Okay, there's some higher force at play that allows some degree of change, but also will course correct if you try to change too much. That's how time works. At least some of what we understand. But that said, the Mandela effect is the ripples. It's the proof that our government is altering time. Altering time. That's the ripples, the Mandela effect. Look it up. I'll give you an example. Now, it might seem small and insignificant, but it's not. Small things are not insignificant, and especially when they add up to multiple ones. All right. If you go back and look at like some of the famous ones are like Luke, I am your father. If you go watch Empire Strikes Back now, it doesn't say Luke, I am your father. If you ask James Earl Jones what he said when he said those lines as Darth Vader, he will say, Luke, I am your father. 5 words. That's what he said. I watched that a billion times as a kid. Not true, because I'd still be watching it right now if that was the case. I watched it a bunch of times as a kid. My mom said that I made her watch it over and over and over because I loved it so much as a little kid. And so and that's the thing with the Mandela effect, though. The words have changed. They're not the same as to what we remember. Even to what James Earl Jones remembers actually saying. It doesn't say that in the movie anymore. And it's not just an edit. Now Jaws. Remember he says we're gonna need a bigger boat? Now it's like you're gonna need a bigger boat. I'm kind of dyslexic, so it's one of those two. It was either you're gonna need a bigger boat, and now it's we're gonna, it went from you're to were. Small change, but still change. How about the Field of Dreams? Remember, it was build it and they will come. Now it's like build it and he will come. It's changed. How about Forrest Gump? Life's like a box of chocolates. Changed. All this stuff has changed. And if you look up videos on the Mandela effect, even posters have changed. Little things have changed. Berenstein Bears, Berenstein. All right, Jif to Jiffy, or Jiffy to Jif. I mean, things like that. Logos on Coca-Cola, on Kit Kat, on other things like that, all changed from what we remember in the past to what it is now. Now, I'll give you a big one. When I was studying to be a police officer years ago, they showed us the Mandela, they showed us the Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination. Man, I watched that thing over and over and over and tried to memorize it and seed it into my brain. That's changed now. The vehicle changed. The number of people in the vehicle changed. The style of the vehicle has changed. All that's changed. It's not the same. If you go look up the Zapruder film now, it's not the same as what it was. And to prove it, I have a buddy who ran with Kennedy back in the day. All right. He was in his crew. And he's an older guy. So I figured he hadn't seen this. And I sat him down one day and showed him, if you look up the Zapruder film now, it's very different than what it was when I saw it years ago. And when I showed it to my buddy who was friends with Kennedy and ran in his circles, he flipped out. I mean, he flipped out when I showed that video to him. And I figured he would. Figured he would, because he hadn't seen it in years. Not the kind of thing you want to remind yourself about. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I'm gonna watch the shooting of like my friend. You know what I mean? Like, and that basically ruined my life too, and put me in prison as well. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, this man suffered from this, and to see this when he saw the new version of the Zapruder film, he flipped out. I'm telling you, and I knew it. I knew it. My intuition told me. But anyway, that said, that is an example of the Mandela effect. And it all started because they said, it was a woman on in a blog that um, Nelson Mandela, they said he died in like 2013 or something like that. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. And a woman said, man, I remember him dying back in the 90s on like Fox News. But I have such a clear memory. Man, I remember Nelson Mandela dying in the 90s. Died in prison. Didn't the news story is he got out of prison and became president. But that's not the story I remember. And I remember where I was when I heard that story on Fox News. I was at my parents' house. I was in high school. I was at my parents' house, and I was walking from the living room to the towards my room down the hall, and I heard Fox News playing in the living room, and I heard them say Nelson Mandela has died today in prison. And I remember I stopped dead in my tracks because I was like, whoa, this is important history. And I went back to the television to watch the story, and my parents even were like, what? And came around me like watching, like, oh no, this is horrible. And I remember watching the story of Nelson Mandela's death in prison in the 90s. And yet that's why it became known as that vlog that woman put out blew up with thousands of people saying, I remember him dying in the prison in the 90s too. Thousands of people are saying, I swear I had that memory like I do. And that became known as the Mandela effect. All right. And people started paying attention, and they're like, whoa, all kinds of things are changing. Weird things are changing, strange. But anyway, that's the ripples in time. So time is being altered. Now, I suggest you go take a look at Andrew Bashago, listen to his story. He has some fantastic stories about time travel and his experiences in those programs that he claims. So I suggest taking a look at that. We're coming up on 3 hours. I'm gonna hurry up and close out the rest. There's one last thing I want to talk about because it's cool. Should have done this in 2 parts, but whatever. I don't want to keep doing 3-hour shows. But some people love it, some people don't. But it's a lot. Anyway, I can talk forever. I just don't want to bore people to death, or take up too much of people's time, or overload them with too much information at once, because I do tend to do that, as I've been accused. All right, so here's my man, Art Bell, who I love. No one like that man in history. He's amazing. Art Bell, who I grew up listening to, um, uh, he he did a show one night, and man, I listened to some of the best Art Bell shows at live when they hit. And, it was back before you could record everything, at least not like today. And so I was listening when Art Bell would do his shows, and he'd be like, "Okay, if time travel's real, then there's got to be some time travels listening to my show right now. I want you to get on the horn and call in. Just get on here. Let's talk this thing out." And he periodically he would do that. All right. Almost like Sheldon in Big Bang Theory, where he's like, okay, well, here we signed this contract that if we ever invent time travel, we'll appear right now in the room. Oh, darn. Remember that episode? I love that. Anyway, so nerd. Um, so Art Bell would say, yeah, if there's real time travelers, someone's got to be listening, so call in. Well, guess what? Of course, all kinds of wahoos called in, right? Some of them were kind of, you're kind of scratching your head on this one. Like, I don't know. One of them in particular uh, was something, and that was John Titor. I've heard it pronounced different names. Um, I think it's John Titor. I think the I is a hard I. Anyway, so John Titor, this guy claims that he was a time traveler, and he would call in on Art Bell's show, and periodically he would give our information to Art Bell, claiming that he is in fact a time traveler from the future. All right. Now, there's some things about John Titor, and I'm not going deep into his story. I'm just brushing the surface, but there's some things about his story that are very, very interesting and above the norm, like way above the norm. First and foremost is he described and actually gave kind of schematics of the actual device time machine that he used. All right. He explained some of the physics and some of the technology that built the device. Now, not too many people have done that, but not only that, some high level physicists actually got hold of this, read this information, and they said, you know what? This could be real. This actually could work in theory. You know, wow, that's a big one. God gave proof He gave schematic. He said he would give proof, and he did. Now, does it actually work? I don't know, but I am highly impressed that he went through the effort to describing how time travel works, describing the physics and limitations, and to actually describe the technology, and for high level scientists to actually say, hey, there is actually something to this. That this is there. This is a very real possibility. That is way cool. Not too many people get that far. Now, he's described that he had this device that he had in the back of a car, and it wasn't a pickup truck. It was a this is the only picture I could find to use just as a visual. I like visuals. Um, but he said that the device was large enough that it could fit in the back of a trunk of a standard vehicle. So he used a standard car. Hey, think about it. We're in some Back to the Future stuff now, right? I mean, come on, a car for time travel. I mean, come on. Spielberg got it right twice. What the hell? Who's feeding this man information? I'm just kidding. But yeah, he said he kept it it was the size it could fit in the back of a trunk of a standard car, this device. And then, like I said, he described the device, how it worked. He described the physics, how it worked. He described what the experience is like when you're in the car and you go through the time travel. I mean, he gave a lot of detail. It was interesting. But one of the things that was like most interesting, all right, now that's some pretty high level stuff right there. But here's something else that's super interesting. Now, before I tell you that, that's a little teaser. I'm going to preface that by telling you a little bit about his time real quickly. He said that there was a giant catastrophic war that pretty much decimated the whole planet. Does that sound like anything familiar? When the globalists in our country and world leader globalists right now, the UN, NATO, are trying to pick a big World War III fight with Russia, beating Russia in the head with a stick, saying, "Come on, do something, do something, do something, do something. Come on, I'll send some more missiles. Do something." And we're trying to start World War III so they can build their one world government, and that's why they're doing it, to build their one world government. But that said, John Titor said that in the future, our world went through a devastating catastrophe. I believe it was war, like a all-out nuclear war, and it destroyed most of the planet, most of the people. Populations were very small after that, and he said he basically grew up in a farming community that was like just families that came together to form a small, tight-knit community. And their technology was very basic. He said they did have computers and stuff like that, but it was very limited. It wasn't only like special access, like government had those things, and common people didn't have any access to that. We were like knocked back to the Stone Ages, really, for most things. He described the time he lived in was a rough time. It was a hard time. People had to be hard workers in the fields, just trying to survive by growing crops. And they were mostly, he said, communities were very small, and they were spread out. Populations were small. They weren't like today with big cities for the most part and stuff like that. He said he ended up working for the government and the military, and just like out of freaking um what do you call it? Terminator, right? They had to send John Connor back to save Sarah Connor. Was it John Connor? No. They had to send Kyle Reese to save Sarah Connor. It's been a while. From the 2000, 8,000, 1,000, some thousand. And they had to send him back in time to save her. Well, and he was a military dude, right? So just like that, he said that they did have time travel technology that was, I guess, left over from what we have now. In fact, he specifically stated that we actually have that time travel, that it was in his future, that it exists here and now in our future. I mean, in our present, that we're not told about it, You know, it's all secret and hushed up, and they don't tell the general public. But he says we have that technology right here, right now. And I guess it was left over that they were able to recover in the future from probably from now, because I don't think they even had the technology in the future to recreate that. They were using the technology we have now, I think, to repair and use it. But they sent him back in time, and Art Bell asked him, "Why were you chosen for this mission?" And he gave an extremely good answer. All right, I think it deserves a sip. That, and I'm getting real dry and can't talk anymore. Anyway, he said he was sent back in time because he was charged with trying to recover a computer that only exists actually in our recent past. All right. Um, I don't know if it even exists now, but it existed in our recent past, like the 80s and stuff like that, right? And he said he was sent back in time to retrieve this one specific computer. All right. And it was built, it was a precursor special computer built by I believe IBM. All right. And he said that and Art Bell's like, well, what's why this computer? What's special about it? He said that when they were inventing computers, this one computer that was designed and created by, I believe, IBM, he said, was built in such a way that it had an ability to do what other computers can't do. And I don't understand the full explanation of that. I have to go back and listen to all that stuff. I just don't have the time for that right now. But he said that these computers had a special coding system. They were unique. And here's the crazy thing. I think there was only like 3 of them ever built in history. Might have been like 5, but there was a very limited number of these exact computers that were built, and they could do some things that other computers couldn't do. And he said that in the future, when they were trying to restart like computers and technology, they needed this system from this computer and able to make the other computers function correctly, or something to that degree. And here's the craziness. Not only is that like very extreme detail about something very rare, but doggone, boom. Could you read that fast? There are actually people in the computer world that verified that that exact computer that he was referring to is real, is real. And very, very few people on earth knew about this computer or what it could do. All right. And I don't understand why this thing's so special, but there's something about this computer that helps their technology in the future. Here's a bigger picture of that same computer. All right. That computer actually exists. And very few, even there were people from IBM, it was IBM, that technicians that came forward after hearing that story, and they said, yeah, there's not many people that's not common knowledge. There's very few people that even know about the existence of this specialized computer that they only built a few of. So how in the world did this guy even know about it? And also furthermore to that, Art Bell said, well, why did they choose you to do this mission? What makes you unique or special that they would send you back? Because that was a hard thing for them to do, you know? Um, he said, because he is a blood descendant relative of one of the men who built that computer. That's why. And they figured by sending a descendant blood relative, he would be able to convince the guy is the family member from the past the importance of why he needed him to give him basically one of these super rare computers that were only like 3 or 5 of them made in existence ever. And he said that's why they chose John Titor to perform the mission. Now, that's insanely crazy and somewhat verified, which is insane. Now, if that wasn't enough, it gets crazier. All right. First of all, he gives a lot of detail about time travel and our timeline. He decided he sent the device back. He completed his mission. He got it. He sent it back. He completed his mission. But he decided to stay here in this timeline and live here with us. All right. Now there are a couple reasons why. He said there are multiple timelines that he could have. First of all, I think it was impossible for him to go exactly back where he left from for whatever laws of physics. He could get the device back, and he did that. He probably put it in a place where they could recover it. You know what I mean? Um, Something to that effect. I mean, when you're playing with time, there's all kinds of little tricks, party tricks you can pull. But that said, he decided he couldn't go back to his exact timeline, so he couldn't exactly go home. And he said there were multiple timelines, but he said a lot of the timelines were worse than the one we're living in right now. So he chose our timeline. He said the catastrophe I know is still coming, the big event that changes the world. But he said I have the most time in this one. And he contacted his former mother and family that was living, I believe, in Florida. He shows up as an adult. Hello. Hey, mom. Do you recognize me? He showed up as an adult to his younger mother that had him as a young child, like on her shoulder or standing at her leg kind of thing. He's looking at himself. And he was able to convince this woman that he is that child standing next to her leg or holding in her arms as an adult from the future, standing in front of her, talking to her. He was able to convince this woman. Now, I talk about intuition. Mothers have intuitions about their children. They have I'm getting chills. They have intuition about their children. You know, I would like to think that if I went back to a younger version of my mom, that she would be able to recognize me, even though she hadn't seen me as an adult and only knew me as a child or young. I would believe. Now, my dad might take more convincing. He could be ass. I love my dad. My dad passed away. I miss him. Both my parents passed away. I miss him greatly. I was thinking about them both this morning. But anyway, um, I really believe that if I saw my mom and her younger self, it wouldn't take much for me to convince her that I'm her son. First of all, I'd have the same sounding voice, eyes, you know what I mean? Mannerisms, maybe even birthmark or something, you know what I mean? Moms know this kind of stuff, you know? Um, and then there's just that intuition vibe. He was able to convince a modern woman that he was her son from the future. The family like retained an attorney because the public went wild and was trying to hound dog the family, you know? Can imagine that was before like internet stuff, you know what I mean? So, but or when it was just starting out, not like today with social media and stuff, you know what I mean? But but the mom fully believed that that was her son from the future. Now, that brings up another important point. He was a kid living in our time before the catastrophe happened that messed up their future, you know? So that's something to consider. Um, so in other words, we're not far off. And I started off saying on the show I was going to do a different show tonight and tell my story about how the God reached out to me and gave me visions and prophecies when I was a kid, and all those are coming true now. And part of those prophecies was the destruction, the full out destruction of the United States and eventually the world to being a fourth of what it is now, um, if not more. So, but I decided to save that for another time. And that pretty much brings us to a close of what I wanted to tell you about. So, John Titor, another possibility for time travel. So, I decided to take time travel from a few different angles here. We brought up the USS Eldridge in the Philadelphia experiment, also sometimes nicknamed the Rainbow Project. Um, and then we tied into how that led to the Montauk Project, how the Montauk Project worked with MK Ultra, and how it inspired the television series, which is a great series, by the way. They did a fantastic job of Stranger Things. Um, so we showed that, and then we went from there. We told Al Bielek's story to his brother Duncan's story to Preston's story, and work in Montauk and Duncan work in the chair. We led that to and we went from there to Andrew Bashago with the Project Pegasus and the time travel experiments as in the early stages. Once the U.S. government in the early '80s had time travel devices and use those for their purposes, and I'm sure to manipulate things in time. Like he said, he delivered a letter to Lincoln himself, so that's definitely a manipulation. And that was the early stages of stuff. Imagine the kind of stuff we're talking about now. Plus, we have the Mandela effect, and that, like I say, is a proof that our timelines are being manipulated and altered. All right. um, and then I went into Art Bell's story of John Titor, who claimed that that he is a time traveler from the future, and that he had a device in his car that Steven Spielberg ripped off for a second movie, not just Close Encounters, but ripped off Back to the Future. And then we went into the story of John Titor, how he was able to discover a computer that very few people even knew existed, and only a few were ever made in history, but somehow it was absolutely fundamental to them rebuilding their computer network systems in the future. Um, Now, last thing I'm going to show, and I'm not going too heavy with this, just two pictures, but one is, if you do searches online, this was someone talking about a story with John Titor. This doesn't necessarily mean this was him, but if you do searches online, you come across all kinds of crazy stuff. This guy looks like he's off a modern street, like in modern times today. But look how everyone's dressed around him. Absolutely, they're on in period appropriate attire. Where this guy's not. He stands out as an oddball, from the haircut to the glasses to the clothing. Um, that he's wearing, and even the design print on the t-shirt he's wearing, that's not something that's common to them. But yet there's tons and tons of pictures like this. On my last episode, I showed or 2 episodes ago, well, I don't know, and one of them, I don't think it was the vampire one, or was it? I don't know. I showed the how in Japan near Fukushima, or where one of the bombs dropped, they found a modern cell phone there, like a modern cell phone from today, back from all those years ago before they existed. And there's pictures of that, and it's crazy. It looks really real. And there's lots and lots of stories like this. Here's one I always loved. Some people point out at a Tyson fight, one of the famous Tyson fights, there was somebody in the audience that had like a cell phone that didn't exist yet. I mean, and there's lots of things like that. I came across one where there was a recital. It's something like for Disney, where they had like kids dancing on a stage, and they had a woman filming it with a camera that did not exist yet. She was filming a video camera before video cameras were made. And there's just hundreds of stories like that. I mean, you can find now. I'm sure you got to be careful, because people can doctor all kinds of craziness today, but they're not all doctored. It's like the pictures of giants. I'm sure some of those are doctored, but they're not all doctored. And today we're so oversaturated with anything can be faked that you could see real and not realize it. Like that. That's like dog man stuff all the time. People are like, you show them good evidence, and they're like, "Oh man, come on, someone made that. That's not real." But so we're literally programmed or preconditioned not to accept the real truth, even when what's on our face. But I get it. We're so oversaturated, but that's part of the plan, part of the mission. So that is my take and short show on time travel. Short show, 3 hours. But it's just so much to cover with this, and I'm only scratching the surface with some of this. I could deep dive all this stuff. But it's too much, and I really should have probably broken this into two. But they're all related, and they all go together. Um, and so it's crazy. The world is not. We're told in society that we have to believe that reality is only a specific way, and we're pigeoned in a box to believe that. The world is bigger than even our human perception of what it is to be human. The world's bigger than that. The world's bigger. And we have to question sometimes what we're told to believe or what is reality. When I was raised in school to be a critical thinker. There's no such thing as that. Now school is to teach communism and socialism. That's it. And to distort facts to fit one narrative. That's education now. You know, the same degrees today are not worth what they were before. I guarantee you, it doesn't work that way. That's like Elon Musk. People keep saying, "Yeah, I have a PhD from Harvard," and Elon's like, "Yeah, and that's worth like a box of chocolates. Go sit on a stick and." Well, I'm not gonna be vulgar, but you get what I'm saying. He's like, forget your PhDs. It's crap. And Elon Musk says, dude, don't confuse PhDs with knowledge. There's he's like he's like he's like I don't have those PhDs, and yet you're working for me. You know, and he hires people that don't have PhDs, but they have knowledge and they know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? It's like we put too much emphasis sometimes on, oh, how many letters do you have behind your name, and like that person's any authority on jack or crap. I mean, you got to question. You got to question. We need to question everything today, especially since everything we're told is often for manipulation and lies, especially when you have a government that's evil and you have a media that's lying to you and controlled by the government. Hello. And they remove laws that are anti-propaganda laws. Hey, why don't we bring the anti-propaganda laws back, making it illegal? So every time you're doing that on the news, it's illegal. And you could go to jail. You could be sued. You know what I mean? Bring that back, and I bet you a whole lot of propaganda will go away. There's a reason why they removed that law. Hello? I mean, McFly. Since we're talking Back to the Future, right? Anyway, um, that's my story for tonight. I hope that everybody enjoyed it. You can contact me. You can reach me at HarbingerReport@yahoo.com. And if you have any stories, you want to reach out. I don't always have time. I try my best to keep up with people. I do get inundated with a lot of stuff. Sometimes people get upset if I don't get back to them, especially right away. Um, I'm struggling, but do reach out to me. And if you got something important, reach out to me again. But you know, you can contact me if you have any stories, if there's anything you want me to talk about or go into. If I don't know about a topic, I'll tell you. Some topics like this are stuff I've been following for years, so I know a little bit about it. But anyway, I hope all this helps people in some kind of way. Remember, the solution to everything and all our problems, all our woes is Jesus. And people might disagree with that. All right. But there's only one truth, and he's it. And he's the creator of the universe. And he's the creator of all creation. Right. So and alien life is not a threat to our faith. It just means God is greater than we thought. And so and the creator is bigger than we thought. I mean, that's all it means. That's it. It doesn't change us. And if they lie and try to say, oh no, we created you, well, dude, I'm created by God. I don't care what you say. you know who I'm in relationship is God. I don't care, what you may tell me. you know um that Pray for peace, pray for love. We need it. Support each other, help each other, and pray for assassinations not to happen to any world leaders or potential world leaders, because it will not end good for any of us. And it's never good when a world leader is assassinated. It's not good. And it shows the decay of our country when we result to that. So we want to be better than that. Let's get back to our original ideals and values. That's the problem, is we've lost identity of values, and there's too many, it's too much communism going on in our country today, in our government and in our education system and in our media and social media. The whole culture, cancel culture society. You know, that's not American. And to our brothers and sisters in other countries, yeah, keep us in your prayers, and we will pray for you as well. And we love you, all of y'all. Uh, so, and to my new friend in Australia, thanks so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it, and I love Australians, and I can't wait to get down there sometimes and go see that beautiful, beautiful country. And there's a lot of beautiful people there too. I love Australia. There's a lot of countries I love. I would really love to travel to Africa, and some parts are not safe right now. Um, I've traveled around most of the world, but I've not been to Africa. I would love to do that. I'd love to go to Tanzania, the Congo. I love animals. I really, really love. I love wild animals. I love sharks. I love water. I should have been a biologist. Like a lot of times, I'm like, man, that's I missed my call. I should have been a biologist because I love like animals and nature and stuff, and not in like any tree hugging way, but you know, just having a love for things that God created and the beauty of our world. I love other cultures too. But anyway, I'm just it's getting late, and I tend to just to meander about all kinds of nonsense at that point. So, look, God bless all of y'all. Please keep me in your prayers. Contact me at HarbingerReport@yahoo.com. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Please tell my show if you like it to other people, and send it out and beat the algorithms that are holding the numbers down because they don't like the content. Let's beat their system. But all of y'all, God bless you. Have a good night. I hope you get something out of the show. Hope you enjoy it. One person told me in my last series with Dogman Cams, the old show, that I helped bring him to God. And wow, that's amazing. Praise God for that, because I couldn't ask for anything better or greater than something like that. They said that it changed their life, and I mean that's just amazing. That's not me, that's God, but it's amazing that God would use that show to do that. I'm glad that some good came out of it, because there was a lot of negative stuff that came out of that, sadly. But I love doing it, and I love the fans. So anyway, for like the fifth time, y'all have a good night. God bless y'all. Keep the lights on. Take care, and keep hitting the end stream. Keep